All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Christian Hangout number 10. Yes, we've made it to 10 of these here things. And with us again, we have LUE-YEE, Dominionist Sam, and we have a newcomer, Rick from the Rome is Burning podcast. So,
how's it going?
Rick, hey. So, would you like to introduce yourself, Rick, and let us know a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. I'm Rick. I run RomeIsBurning.show. It's like the worst podcast on the internet. We don't have any set schedule for release, so it kind of just comes out when we feel inspired. As far as my background, in this vein of things, I was an atheist for most of my life. I'd say probably third grade onwards, and only recently have I converted to to this from a sort of like a short-lived stint as just purely agnostic when I was really exploring it. But I've since I'm fully on board with it at this point. It's I'm gonna go into this further into like really deep detail in the next episode of our podcast. It's gonna be a specifically atheist-centered podcast about the atheist movement and kind of just tearing it down a bit. So if you want the full long, boring story of it, it's going to be on there. But yeah, I'd say I'm relatively a recent convert, but I did go to like a small private school most of my life, so I know the Bible pretty well. Just because of that.
All right. Do you belong to a particular denomination, or?
Yeah, the Greek Orthodox.
Greek Orthodox, okay. Are you Greek yourself, or?
No, far from it.
Okay. That's cool. I mean, I attend an Orthodox church. I'm not of Eastern European descent either, so.
I've noticed you have a little bit of an accent.
An accent? Can you identify as to where?
Maybe Armenian?
No.
Okay.
I'm from Miami, Florida, so it's probably an amalgamation of different accents. And also I'm eating chocolate right now, so.
Yeah. Or Middle Eastern in general, maybe.
No.
Not nowhere in the Middle East?
No, I'm a Zimmerman American.
German?
Oh.
Zimmerman American, I like to say.
Zimmerman American. Yeah.
So you're Hispanic? Or?
Yeah, one of those off-white Hispanics.
White Hispanics.
Okay. Yeah. It's very interesting that we, for our episode on the race question, we have a very diverse crowd. We have an Armenian, Hispanic, and we have Chinese. It's pretty diverse in here.
What?
Just a real racist man. What?
One question: are Zimmerman Americans natural Republicans?
They're the naturalist of Republicans.
They're what?
They're the naturalist of Republicans.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true.
Too bad they're not natural monarchists.
I think they are.
At least not yet.
Not yet.
Natural socialists.
When they become more self-conscious in their conservatism, they will become monarchists.
All right. So this has already been a very interesting hangout. We've got a interesting group here. So, all right. So as you can see by the title, this is called the race question, and basically the issue we're going to be talking about is how Christians should approach race. Now, as I'm sure we all know, that there's a lot of talk about Christians being race cucks or whatever, and like not having any racial identity. And I do think that, speaking as a Christian, I don't think that like looking at the entire world through a racial lens is the proper approach. But it's also improper not to think about such things because it does affect the shape a society takes. And so I guess what we're here to discuss is what the proper balance is, or what the proper view is. And I guess we don't need to necessarily. I'm assuming most people who listen to this are people who have pondered these issues before, and They understand that diversity is kind of a destabilizing factor in any environment. And I remember Argent, he recently had a video where he said something about how he thinks he's noticed there's more human suffering in diverse societies because there's constant conflict. So I think that's a very good argument too. So
did he say because there is not enough conflict?
I said because there's constant conflict.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we like on the alternative right, I guess a lot of the talk is about how politics is basically just a tribal warfare in a diverse society, which is to a large extent true, and it keeps us from dealing with real issues.
Right. Can I play the devil's advocate a little bit?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I think this whole thing about diversity leading to conflict, I think a lot of it is manufactured, for the sake of politics.
What do you mean?
Like, for example, like pretty much the Democratic Party pits Hispanics, blacks, and everybody who's not white against white people, and tries to pit gays against Christians, and like they go around looking for these different groups that they could put up on a pedestal and give them professional victim status in order to,
It's kind of hard to tell where the actual conflict begins and the manufactured conflict ends.
True.
Because the left does kind of it programs non-whites in a white society constantly with this idea of being constantly aggrieved and needing to have some wrong righted. It's pretty annoying. It's very annoying because people develop their entire identity around this feeling of resentment.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of that is due to people sort of playing it up for the sake of political gain, but I would say in my own observation, in my own experience, a lot of that happens without anybody having to prompt them. Like for example, I've talked a little bit about how I spent time working in Korea as an English teacher, and before I went to Korea, I actually tried to do some research about Korea and see what it was like there and see what stories people, like foreigners living in Korea, had. And what was very interesting to me is that, Korea is not a very diverse country, as most of us know. It's like still like 97% ethnic Korean, so most of that's very recent too. So they're used to being pretty homogeneous there. And like a lot of the stuff I was reading was from like Western expats who were talking about, and a lot of stuff they were saying was just complaining about the native Koreans not treating them well, or like being unfair to them, or not being accepting of them. And part of me was like, well, I mean, yeah, that's not very good. That's probably not pleasant if you're in that position. But I mean, at the same time, it's their country, so like, who are you to tell them what they should or shouldn't do? Because like, if you don't like it, go home. But like before I went, that was kind of the approach I took. I was like, all right, just remember you're a guest here, so don't try to, just be respectful, and if you don't like it, you can always go back. And so, but like I guess what I'm saying is like the sort of victim mentality, rent-seeking mentality kind of arises naturally when you're conscious of being an outsider to the mainstream. And so I think that it's probably the same dynamic at work in the U.S. Even like a lot of minority groups will sort of naturally tend toward that conscious outsider status that pits them against the majority.
That's true. It's like I said, it's hard to tell where one end starts and the other begins. But yeah, it's definitely a naturally occurring phenomenon as well. I mean, people end up going into their little neighborhoods and their little cliques no matter what you try to do, and how much you try to break them up, that's really what people do in the end.
Yeah, that's true. Went to public school, and all the kids of the same race hung out with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, oh, go on.
No, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to confirm that, yeah, that's kind of how it was, although my high school wasn't as diverse. At least I actually attended two different high schools. The first one was in an upper middle class suburb, which was mostly whites, Jews, and Asians, and like a lot of the Asians sat at the same table. Although I had a lot of Asian friends, so a lot of times I was like the one white guy sitting with them. So, but yeah, it is just how it is. People naturally, congregate with people who are similar to them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the alt-right, grew out of the agitation of that. Obviously, I mean that should go without saying. But I think the error in it has been, like you said, it's become almost their entire sole focus.
You're saying the alt-right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like I get into arguments with this crap, like constantly, or and I can't tell you the origin of this meme because I can't really haven't pinned down.
Are you
how
talking
a white
about?
arose? No, but the idea that Christianity is flawed for white people because of its universalist ethos, and it's like they become so agitated by the white identity politics or the white privilege politic, that kind of garbage, that they think that the way to correct this is to worship their whiteness. And I think that's why they kind of come to blows with Christianity a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is the problem. And in fact, I know Millennial Woes recently had I don't know if you guys are watching Millennial Woes' latest videos about problems with the alt-right. In his most recent one, he said something very similar, that people are too focused on race to the point where they're ignoring everything else. Like, for instance, like people who want to be spiritually fulfilled and not just have their race survive. And
That's true.
Yeah. LUE-YEE, do you have any thoughts? Or
I have seen people say things about, well, even about this recent Orlando shooting. Oh, hold on. I think I may be getting a call.
Okay, well, just mute yourself if you're on the phone. Okay, good. Oh, sorry. I guess LUE-YEE is pretty busy today. He's getting a lot of phone calls.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is one of my problems with the alt-right too. Is that like so many people, race is like literally the only thing they care about, and like they're not willing to question anything. Like their views are like, as long as we have a homogeneous white society, everything will take care of itself. And while I agree that to some extent that would eliminate a lot of problems, that you look at a lot of homogeneous white societies that did eventually become what they are today and develop certain problems. So it's to say that just having white people is going to solve everything, I'm kind of skeptical of that.
Well, it's also for most of white history, with serious white civilizations, they were Christians. So that's another factor that the alt-right is refusing to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They'll gladly post all day about the honor of their ancestors when it comes to pagan stuff, but they'll ignore their ancestors being Christians for the last 1,000 years.
True.
I just wanted to read a funny comment from the text chat. Quittest Veritas says, "We can all march behind a giant flag with a picture of a DNA strand on it." That's a good one. Yeah. Actually, one of the reasons I started these Hangouts is because I don't know if I've ever told this story, but during Christmas time when Millennial Woes was having his Hangouts, I participated in a few of them, and there were most of the people there were not Christians, so so like at one part we were discussing racial things, and people were kind of saying some critical things of Christianity, and I was like the only Christian there, and I said, well, I forget what I said exactly, but I said something like, well, don't you think that Christianity is part of our heritage and we need to embrace that to going forward, and everyone's just kind of like, nah, sorry, I don't agree with that. And I was just kind of like, well, okay, I don't know what to say now. So I thought Christians who are outside the mainstream right, they do need a space where we can just talk as Christians and have a common understanding as such, and not feel like we have to apologize for being Christians to anybody who disagrees. So, yeah.
Well, they could just create their own religion like the Nazis did in Nazi Germany.
Yeah, and they keep saying that. They keep saying they want an ethno-religion, and it's like changing tradition to fit the current year is. It's kind of how we got to this point. That's
True.
part of the problem. And worshiping yourself, that narcissistic impulse, that's also part of the problem. So yeah, you're right. That is something I see a lot too, and I think it's completely the wrong direction. But I also think the reason that they get so repelled by the idea of religion is because they don't see it as a solution to their problems, and they also their cultural origins are like from Chan culture, from internet culture, and that's very atheistic. So not to sound too modernist about it, but you have to find a way to kind of sell it to them properly. You have to find a way that it fits into the evolution of their ideas.
Yeah, trying to find ways to sell Christianity to non-Christians has been very problematic for the last couple hundred years.
That's ever.
Just don't sell it. We're not here to sell it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't mean to use those words. I don't want to make it sound like we're pitching a product or anything. But like a way to make them understand it, and that isn't just a dismissive way. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do recently. And the next, the show from my stupid show again. The next episode is going to be like the first step in an effort to do that. To try to make it palatable, make it understandable to the alt-right in general, or to the the general internet culture. Because
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
Yeah.
The other tack I've seen people take is the perennialist one that says there's some kind of traditional underlying traditional religion that's manifested in different ways in different cultural traditions. So we have we have it in, they'll say, Sufi Islam, and in traditional forms of Christianity, and in say Shintoism or something like that, that there's some kind of basically solar religion.
Yeah, I've seen the arguments for that. The Evolo stuff, the Gwenon stuff.
Are you talking about perennialism?
Yeah, like rad trad people. I think.
Yeah. Well, I guess the question as far as race and Christianity goes, and I'm sure a lot of people would ask, is Christianity, in what way is it universalist? Like, does it preclude making any acknowledgement of race? Because I mean, some people would say that, like, if we're all brothers in Christ, and then we should all just live together and all just be Christian together and not think about how society's organized.
No, I think there are two different spheres of thought. Well, not completely different. One's got to influence the other, but the idea that because you're a Christian, therefore you don't have a nation or don't have an ethnicity or a people. I mean, look at the Bible. God works through peoples all the time. And I don't mean persons. I mean through peoples. He works through the Jews, through the Romans. He doesn't work through the atomized individual ever. Well, I mean, sure he does, but it doesn't. This idea that it's a universalist meme again, like I was saying earlier. They said, it's a plague, and I don't know where they got this idea from, and they get it from modern Christianity a lot,
Yeah, I mean, I think Christianity is universalist in the sense that salvation is available to all, regardless of race. And I think that's what trips a lot of people up. They think that means that you're not supposed to think about who you belong to, or you're not supposed to have any ties to a particular group, and they see that as as like disruptive to having a well-ordered society. But I don't, I, in my own study of these subjects, I can't find anything that says that you can't have a national identity or you can't work to preserve your own people, or like it is one thing to regard people of other nations as brothers and sisters in Christ, but it's another thing to say that we should all be living together.
Mhm.
Exactly. Uh-huh.
So
Very true.
There's a topic I want to bring up. The topic of ethnic churches versus multi-ethnic churches. Like, is it ever okay to have an ethnic church, or should all churches be ethnic churches, or should all churches be multi-ethnic churches? What do you guys
What are
think?
your church experiences like?
My personal experiences?
Mhm.
Well, there are positives and negatives to both. My experience in ethnic churches, I'm only speaking from my experience in Armenian churches. I don't know how other ethnic churches are like, but my experience is generally that they try to preserve their ethnicness, and it's at the expense. Oftentimes, it seems to be at the expense of the Great Commission, at inviting people in
Mhm.
and everything, and they sort of like get into a hunker bunker mentality a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's also a problem in some Chinese churches. So even in terms of missions budgets, or in terms of who you invite to speak for the annual missions conference, in a Chinese church, you're typically very often going to see a lot more Chinese stuff and maybe not much of anything else.
Right. Wasn't Paul Washer invited to a Chinese church once?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, he was giving a sermon from a Chinese church, a Chinese American church of. No, actually, I think it was a Chinese Canadian church. He was talking through his same Chinese translator that he was using in China.
Hmm.
You're familiar with Paul Washer, right?
I don't know who that is.
I can tell you.
He's a Reformed Baptist pastor that's very popular on the internet. He's well known for his emotional preaching.
Okay.
His most famous video was the shocking youth group message.
It sounds familiar. I think I got a link to it, but I never watched the video.
Yeah, it was pretty much he was going off about the immodesty that was going on, what people were dressing, and how they were acting. They cared more about being like Britney Spears than like Jesus Christ.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
What do you say this video is? It's
the let me link it to you real quick.
okay. As far as like my opinion of ethnic churches or multi-ethnic churches, I don't think that you should have. I don't know if it's a good idea to have a church that excludes anybody, but like not it shouldn't exclude people on the basis of race.
That's
But
phyllotism.
yeah, like that's what the Orthodox term is. That I guess the idea is that like if everybody just happens to be the same race, then okay, fine. That's not a bad thing necessarily. But if you're going to tell somebody you can't be a member of this church because
Right.
you're not part of our ethnic group, then that would be wrong. Because Christianity is supposed to be available to all. It's not supposed to be just a tribal religion.
Yeah, that was the problem that Gandhi ran into, because the Anglicans wouldn't allow him to join his church because he was Indian.
Even now in the Indian church, we see some sorts of, well, so the Church of South India is populated mostly by people from the untouchable sector of the population, whereas some other churches, such as the Martymite churches, those claim a descent from the evangelism of St. Thomas in India, and those are populated mostly by people in the upper castes of Kerala, along the Malabar coast. So there are these kinds of sociological differences among denominations in India.
I think it goes the other way as well. If you're a person who's not of the ethnicity of, the very ethnic church that you're going to, you shouldn't be making waves and be like, well, can we hang some maracas up here because I got, or something like that, You don't want that either.
You don't want to try introducing dancing into a Chinese church. It's just not going to work well.
I can't imagine it going over very well.
Yeah.
I've actually been to a lot of different, I guess you might call them ethnic churches. Like I've been to Korean churches. I've been to the Greek Orthodox Church around here a couple times. I actually went to a black church with a friend of mine when I was in college, and I was literally the only white person there. So it was a very interesting church experience. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been that before. So I mean, I've seen how different groups do church. So,
yeah, in the church I went, in the church I go to, it's all Greek Orthodox, and it's only I'm pretty sure I'm the only non-Greek guy in there, and some of the old Greek guys, they give me the stink eye, but whatever. Anyway, who's this guy?
I remember Henry, aka Giovanni, was saying that he used to attend a Greek Orthodox church, and a lot of times he felt like it was more about the Greek part than about the Orthodox part.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the same problem with the Armenian church, the Armenian Orthodox Church. I'm talking about specifically.
Yeah.
They're more about ethnic identity than the Christian part.
Yes. They don't have a lot of doctrine. The only thing they know is that the Protestants are wrong. That's it.
Yeah, that's pretty. I mean, it's very interesting how that could happen. Like, I mean, if you have a religious institution that started, but it becomes more about just social ties than.
Yeah,
I don't know, I mean,
I could definitely speak about that specific experience because the church I left, it was exactly that. It was basically there was a lot of nepotism and there was a lot of let me get my thoughts together real quick. It was like mainly the same it's like most of the youth group was the same extended family, and it was like the church was organizing a lot of social events and everything, but there wasn't a lot of spiritual growth.
I feel you. That's one of my big worries, that you go out there and it's just the community aspect, which is important, but it can't be the entire thing.
Yeah, I'm talking about an Armenian Protestant church here, not an Armenian Orthodox church.
Yeah, it's a whole different bag of.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Chinese churches, there's a lot of struggle, I think, between generations. So, the people who are born in the States, a lot of them may not even speak Chinese very well, and some of them not at all. So culturally, they just are going to feel somewhat different from the people who were born overseas. Now, of course, because Chinese immigration continues, you're going to have both kinds of populations, and both of them are going to grow as time goes on. And of course, these, people like me who were born in America, we want to bring our friends and whatever, stuff like that. And on the other hand, most, I think, American-born Chinese aren't even as concerned with Chinese culture as I am. I think I'm quite unusual in being fluent in Cantonese and able to speak Mandarin. But most people aren't, even if they have some knowledge of their cultural customs at home. And they do want to have the kinds of churches that are not, unwelcoming to people who are not Chinese. They do want to be able to bring their friends, and I think that's good and laudable. But there is going to be struggle there, and sometimes it results in, well, sadly, it does statistically result in a lot of church splits. This is also the case, I think, with Korean churches, although since I'm not in Korean churches, I'm not as familiar with the causes of Korean church splits. But Chinese church splits are also pretty common, and it's usually generational. I know of some churches in the area who, well, some of the people, even the children of the elders at this church, they say that if the church doesn't change, they're going to go somewhere else. They're not going to be able to stay at their parents' churches. And these aren't things that they're willing to discuss openly with their parents because they don't want to offend them.
Right.
But they don't feel that these are the kinds of churches that are, I guess, open enough to people to their friends who are not Chinese, whom they may want to bring. Now, I think some of the problem may be that people don't actually value Chinese culture enough. Maybe they're atomized and they're, in whatever ways that immigrants are in America. But the other end of the problem is that the older Chinese people don't know how to deal with this. And what I thought of was maybe actually you can go and find a pastor who's not Chinese. This does signal that you're open to people who are not Chinese, even if the congregation is, at least for the most part, culturally Chinese. And there is a way, I think, to maintain a connection to, Chinese values, certain kind of Chinese culture, and you can remove, and you can do that even while, say, removing the word Chinese from your church, as most Chinese churches, I think, do have the word Chinese in their names. So you'll have, Fairfax Chinese Alliance Church, or you'll have Silicon Valley. Okay, actually, Silicon Valley Alliance Church doesn't have Chinese because so many people in the Silicon Valley just are Chinese. But you might have Chinese Bible Church of Maryland. But yes, I think as time goes on, you do have to make some kinds of changes that involve, removing that kind of exclusivity. But you could easily signal Chinese heritage in a different way without having to have Chinese in your name. You could, for example, rename your church the Church of Saint Alapin, who was the first known priest to have reached China. Or you could name it after Hudson Taylor, who was a Methodist missionary back in the 19th century. His descendants are still active among the Chinese. They have some of them have intermarried with the Chinese, so they have culturally Chinese children. But I think these are some of the ways that you could change the name. You could even have some pastors who are not Chinese and still maintain a cultural connection to Chineseness.
I guess the problem is that when you're not in China, having to maintain a separate identity or trying to maintain a separate identity is difficult for being cohesive with the rest of society.
Right. Well, I've dealt with it my whole life.
Well, yeah, to be fair, though, there are a lot of Chinese coming in. So, I mean, the community will probably be around for a long time.
Yeah.
That's true. You were going to say something, Rick?
No, no, it's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I was thinking, I've attended a Korean church. I know LUE-YEE mentioned the Korean churches. He's heard they've had problems.
Yeah.
I've been to a Korean church in my area a couple times, and the people there are actually pretty friendly. They're not. I wouldn't say they're unwelcoming to non-Koreans, and it does seem there are some regular attenders there who are not Korean themselves. I don't know what their story is exactly, but I mean, it seems like they're not closed to having non-Koreans participate,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually do offer like certain English things, like the regular service is in Korean, but
Yep.
they have like a translator headset thing that'll let you know what
Wow.
he's saying. So
Yeah,
it seems like
that's. I know what you're talking about. That's my experience from the Armenian church I grew up in. It was it only had one service in Armenian, and they had the headset translator things for non-Armenian visitors.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I do know what it is like to be at a church where you're like an outsider to like the cultural identity of the church. Like it does make you kind of feel out of place, just because not because anybody's being like rude to you or hostile to you, but it's like
Right.
it's just you don't really understand the way everybody is there.
Right.
There's certain cultural lingo you have to get used to.
Uh-huh. Like at the Greek Orthodox Church, there's a lot of people there who speak Greek. They serve a lot of Greek food, and nobody's like, "Oh, you're not Greek" or anything like that. But just
Well, there's one guy I'm pretty sure who's mad about me being there, but just one.
really,
He just the guy kept eyeballing me. I'm like, dude, this guy's mad. what can you do?
yeah, Greeks are interesting. Like I've heard that. I mean, I guess we all know the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, or we've seen that movie.
Yeah.
Like
I haven't seen it.
Well, basically, it's about this Greek woman who comes from a really traditional Greek family, and she's always been kind of she's never really had any luck with romance. Then she finally this guy takes an interest in her, and he's not Greek. He's like this really Anglo guy. And at first, her parents are like, no, her father at least was like, no, you're not Greek. I don't want my daughter to marry a non-Greek. But eventually, like, he gives in and lets them get married. But so it's partially about just this woman, like, finally finding a husband, and also the husband guy, how he's dealing with all this Greek stuff that's completely foreign to him. And it's kind of funny.
The part I remember was when he was getting baptized in the Greek Orthodox Church. That was classic.
Yeah, there was that part I remember. And but I guess what I was saying is I remember my father saying that all the Greek people he knew growing up were like that too. Like they were very big about they're very big about marrying other Greeks and stuff. Like they're very strong about the ethnic identity.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true as much today as it was in the past or what, but
yeah, I think that's true with all groups. I know it's true with my group.
I still want my kids to marry Chinese.
What did you say?
I still want my kids to marry Chinese, and I'm not even married yet.
Yeah,
You're planning ahead. That's good.
Lou, are you a kinist?
No, I'm not a kinist. But I would like my kids to marry people who at least spoke Chinese and had some bit of a clue how to deal with Chinese social situations, which for the most part is not going to be people who are outside the sinosphere. Of course, there are exceptions, but really, I think most white people thrown into a Chinese social situation, especially with women in these situations, are going to be kind of clueless.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of which, I went to a Chinese restaurant once, like a real Chinese restaurant, not P.F. Chang.
P.F. Chang's, Panda Express.
Panda Inn. Yeah. Well, it was a Chinese restaurant in like believe it was in Arcadia. If you guys are
Uh-huh.
familiar with that area in Southern California, it's some people jokingly call it Arcasia because it's all Chinese there.
It's pretty Chinese.
You've been there?
Well, and they have streets named after Yale and Harvard and Stanford and stuff like that, so of course
Yeah.
that's popular with the Chinese. They like having names like that. It's auspicious for their kids.
Yeah. Well, I was eating there, like, you could tell it's a real Chinese restaurant because we're the only non-Chinese eating there. I go there oftentimes with my mom and our other relatives.
Well, good,
And
real Chinese food.
yeah, I mean I love real Chinese food.
Yeah.
And I love fake Chinese food too. Yeah. So what I've noticed was I was at the other table. There was a Chinese family with, and there was a white boyfriend, and the white boyfriend's kind of, I don't know, it's something about him that's a little bit emasculated or something. Like, there's something weird about like the white guys who like to date Chinese girls. Am I just being prejudiced or something, or do you notice it too?
Personally, I think
don't-
it's all white guys who date non-whites. There's always something kind of they have in common. Yeah, there's a few friends I know who are very, very Hispanic, and they have like they'll bring the white boyfriend to the big get-togethers,
Yeah.
and they just stand out because there's something. I mean, I don't want to pigeonhole everybody. I don't want to just cast a giant aspersion net over everybody. But yeah, there's something there. And I don't want to say it's because they failed with their women, so they went with ours or something, kind of stupid like that. But maybe they feel like they're already fish out of water in their regular lives, so they kind of go towards those situations.
I think
Yeah.
there's something to that because I don't know if any of you guys read the blog Evolutionist X, but I remember she talks about a lot of like HBD stuff and science stuff, and it's very interesting, even though it's not Christian oriented. But she said that she briefly touched on that once, saying that like there's a lot of men who date outside their race that often have confidence issues. So, like I forget, she like quoted somebody who was like a product of a mixed marriage, like and racially mixed marriage, and he said that his dad like married a different race because he didn't feel confident with girls of his own race.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, I talked to this about this subject a lot with my friend who's white. He's Anglo-German American. He talks about like how white women are so brainwashed by feminism that white men are leaving them for non-white women.
what's funny about that is a while back on Twitter, I actually encountered these two Asian guys who were saying the same thing about Asian women. They say white women are better because Asian women are totally brainwashed with feminism.
That's
Like,
also true.
Yeah.
It's all
Well, he's
true.
saying
And Armenian women too.
I think it's just women in general. We gotta
Yeah.
we gotta man up and rescue them from this brainwashing.
There's been a general like massive division and like different development between like I guess you can call it male culture and female culture in the West in general, and not just the West either, but yeah. So I guess everyone kind of experiences that on some level, and so they think, oh, it must be better off on the other side, but no, same thing. You gotta deal with it there too.
Yep. Grass is always greener.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Asian guy on Twitter. Well, it's two different Asian guys who I guess were friends. I think they were Korean, but it's funny how they're one guy was saying he was a paleo-conservative, but he's also going on about how he hates white men, and it's like, okay, well, that's a little weird. Like, he has this resentment for white men, like, so that was a very odd combination.
Yeah.
Because
I
there's like
mean,
a small I'm sorry, go
What?
ahead.
nothing. I was just gonna say, like, if you're a paleo-conservative and you don't like white men, it's gonna be pretty tough for you to find a crowd.
Exactly. It's and what the hell was I gonna say right now? Jeez, I can't remember what I was gonna say.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, all the time. It's
I'm about to
terrible.
say something, then I suddenly blank out.
Yeah, same here.
There's okay. I got it. It's probably because, and I've seen this on Reddit. There's a small little, like a clique or subculture of some Asian guys in the West who they get really bent out of shape about white guys lusting after Asian girls.
Oh, everyone gets somewhat bent out of shape about that because there are
Yeah,
a lot
and
of
that's understandable.
those.
Yeah, yeah, and there's plenty of that, and there's, I mean, God knows there's plenty of in the alt right, so
Yeah.
way too much.
Not
But
gonna
yeah,
name
so
names.
there's a subreddit called
Sorry, I need to go to the restroom real quick. I'm gonna mute my mic and come back.
awesome. Thanks for letting us know.
It's fine.
There's a subreddit called Asian masculinity, and at first it started out like a very constructive advice type of subreddit for Asian guys in the West who were trying to worry about the issues concerning masculinity in men, etc.
Mhm.
But it just degenerated into this whine fest about white guys and Asian girls going after white guys. It became a lot of self pity, and it was pretty sad to watch because it would have been a good community if not for that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
So yeah, it was
in a way,
definitely
that's kind of
cringe.
like how the alt-right is. Like, there's a lot of guys who, they want to talk about positive things, but there are often times a lot of guys just whine about stuff. And I agree, it's easy to get angry about a lot of the stuff that's going on in the West today. But I mean, if it just becomes sort of a feeling sorry for yourself thing, it doesn't really help you.
Exactly. You can't just bitch and moan forever. You gotta start building something eventually. But the internet kind of lends itself to that form of communication. Everyone kind of they'll it's easier to just to go online and vent than it is to like
Right?
sit down and try to build something.
Yeah. Well, maybe just venting is part of the process of getting out your anger so you can focus on building stuff.
Yeah,
But,
but you can get wrapped up in that whole feedback loop where everybody's just
uh-huh.
yelling at each other about different things.
Yeah.
That's true in real life too, but on the internet there's a tendency for that sort of stuff to just get amplified.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then people hit like and,
You get a dopamine rush and suddenly you feel great. I'm like, oh, everyone liked my post. I better keep posting like this.
Yeah. So, been a very interesting conversation so far. We have a few more people joining later, I think, so hopefully we can stay on and keep it going for a while. And I've seen some people in the text chat saying how, like, a lot of people who do marry outside the race are people who are misfits, which I guess is kind of what we were saying. But I can kind of relate to that just because when I first went to Korea as a teacher, which is like 5 years ago now, I was kind of less right wing than I am now, and part of me was thinking, what if at at the time I was a little bit kind of disillusioned with the state of society, but I just didn't really know what to make of it because I hadn't really discovered the alt right yet. And I remember part of me was thinking when I went there, what if I started a new life in Korea? What if I, you know, like just said, forget America, I'm here now. Like there was a part of me thinking that because I guess I didn't really know where I was going with my life.
Mhm.
And so maybe there is some truth to that. Like if you want to, trying to leave your own heritage can be a product of feeling alienated by
Yeah.
society at large.
It's very true.
And,
That's something,
and
that's
yeah,
something
go
that
on.
that's something that most people, do feel, is that sense of alienation in the modern world in the current year. So
Yeah.
I guess you can sort of sympathize, if not.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how, like at that time, I wasn't exactly red pilled, but I was kind of in that. I was kind of post blue pill, but not red pill either. So it's like in that middle area where you're still trying to just make sense of everything and not really sure where to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, question, Rick, like, are you like part Hispanic, or did you say you're like just lighter skinned Hispanic, or
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated.
okay,
Uh,
like
I prefer to keep it just kind of racially ambiguous, especially on the show. I don't like to talk
okay,
dwell on it too much, just because it's like to tell the same story 1,000 times will probably get really annoying. But yeah,
yeah,
basically, I'm like if you look at my family tree, it's a bunch of just a bunch of helpless mongrels
Hmm.
from every strain. There's like
So
two things. There's two things I'm missing from the family tree, which is like Jews and blacks. Besides that,
okay,
everything else is represented at some point. So
so
yeah.
like as far as you go with like, are you married?
No, no. I do have a girlfriend, but that
Okay,
I live with. So
all right. So
yeah.
like is I know that LUE-YEE was saying how he wants to have Chinese kids who marry Chinese, and I feel the same way just as a white guy. Like, I want to marry a white woman and have white children who marry other whites. But for you, is that less of an issue just because you don't have as strong an identity, or?
Well, I mean, it's still you're part of that American spicosphere.
Okay.
So
Because
yeah.
well, okay. So you think that
So
so
my girlfriend
it's
is
like
like me, one of the lighter Hispanic types. So yeah.
okay, yeah. I mean, I guess as far as like mixing goes, like there's always like places where the edges are ambiguous, and so some crossover is more feasible than others. So
Hmm.
like you not get caught up in you can't get too caught up in being exact about it. Like ugh.
People are mad at me that I'm cohabitating in the
Yeah,
spring
those
check over
text
here.
chat. Ree! Yeah, I see that. Yeah, race is always a touchy subject, but it's one I think we can discuss as adults.
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
Yeah. So, yeah, sorry, I hate these lulls when it's just like everybody momentarily can't think of anything to say.
Well,
Does anybody have any topics they'd like to
I'm
introduce?
back.
Hey, Dominionist Sam.
Hey, yeah. S see.
Did you have
Does the
anything else?
does the topic have to relate specifically to race?
people are telling me that I have to go
Uh,
back, actually, in the spring chat. And I wanted to know that if you wall off Florida, I won't blame you, but I'll be definitely sad about it.
Huh.
yeah,
Okay.
built the wall. So, well, okay, let's hear what it is, and we'll see if we can
Okay.
discuss it.
Right. See. It's related to church. Youth ministry is like, I think, one of the things that are wrong with the church in general. I don't know if this is going off topic.
Well, it's an interesting topic, but I mean, it might be one for a
Yeah.
different. Yeah, maybe just because I don't want to get too off topic with this because
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep these more focused on specific issues. But I mean, that is an interesting question that might be good for a future hangout.
Yeah. But the one question I want to ask on a related note, like, have you had experience in like going to youth ministries of different ethnic churches?
Me, well, I guess in my own churches, which were predominantly white for most of my upbringing, like I've experienced those, and I have seen at the Korean church that I went to in recent years, I got to see how their youth ministry went because I was actually there to help with the youth group, and like basically the way it is in the Korean church is that most of the adults are either like are Korean speakers, and their kids are like first generation or second generation or whatever, and they mostly learn in English, and they probably don't know. I think a lot of them don't really know Korean that well, so they have their
Yeah,
own separate, more Americanized uh, group. So
yeah,
I guess from what I saw there, it was mostly pretty basic stuff. I don't remember. I can't think of how it really compared to what I was used to, just because I don't know if they really got deep into doctrine. It's more about just being able to recite Bible verses and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
from what I remember was that when I was in high school, I went to different churches and visited different youth ministries. The craziest youth ministry was at the white church, and the Armenian church's youth ministry was relatively conservative.
I think it'd be really funny if it was actually called that, the White Church.
Yeah.
This is the White Church.
Yeah.
We called them white churches, but
It
yeah,
would be a,
called them white churches.
yeah. I was gonna say that would be an interesting question to ask white church goers.
Yeah, that would be
See,
interesting.
yeah, see what they
And
think.
you said it was crazy. How was it crazy?
Um, it's my memory is very fuzzy from what I remember. It was like one kid standing up front with a guitar, and it was like a large group of 500 kids in the building at least in the room, and it was a pretty big room. And this was at mega church on top of that.
Well, yeah,
And
mega churches are a different animal, I think.
that's true. You're absolutely right. And like he was saying, like asking the newcomers to introduce themselves, and like after they introduced themselves, he threw candy at them while playing the guitar. Like
It's like
I was,
Rick Nielsen, except with candy.
yeah, I know. I mean, my friend was like, I'm not even gonna introduce myself.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's silly. There's a lot of discussion groups I'm a part of on Facebook, and there's one where it was whole thread talking about the weirdest church experiences you've had, and there was a guy who said in there that he put it very bluntly, well not bluntly, succinctly, especially when you're talking about like the Orthodox church experience. It's all very quiet, it's all very controlled.
yeah,
But this church that he went to, this one Protestant church he went to, that was all very loud, very hectic. Everyone's banging some sort of instrument, and the way he put it was so perfect. He said, "There's so much noise you can't hear the Holy Spirit." That made a lot
that's
of
true.
sense.
Yeah,
That made a lot of sense. It was just like a big chaos, like a circus, and it's like silly. Yeah, and you see a lot of that happening everywhere. You see a lot of
yeah.
people doing like dancing.
That yeah, that's definitely one of the subjects that I've been wanting to read up on, like what's appropriate and biblical in worship versus what isn't, and there's like a lot of controversy on that, as LUE-YEE would probably know,
Hmm.
especially like within like the Reformed tradition and the regulative principle of worship versus the normative principle of worship. You know about that stuff, like, right, Lou?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing I've been thinking of, like, what's, like, this is sort of a begging the question a little bit because I'm assuming that everybody in here is a Protestant, but like what was allowed like in the church service and what isn't? Like, is it okay? Okay, what instruments are allowed? Okay, if you just have a piano, or can you also have a guitar and a whole rock band and have YouTube playing?
Exactly. Once you draw that line, or once you take the line away, once you cross that line, it descends into that circus-like atmosphere. If one guitar, then you need two guitars. Then you need a bass. Then you need a drummer.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well, I've seen a lot of these rock band worships.
Yeah,
Sorry.
two guitars that reminds me of heavy metal, rhythm and lead guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's
So
just rock and roll in general.
we're not really talking about needing things to be mentioned by the Bible to have them in the service. I mean, I don't think anyone needs the Bible to tell us that we should be clothed in church and stuff like that. That's just common sense.
Yeah, I mean that's just implied that you should be clothed. I mean,
Right.
well, there's an explicit part where Paul tells a woman to dress modestly. You know.
Right, and that part is definitely still applicable now.
Yeah. Although a lot of liberal Christians would like to debate that, but it's not for debate.
Yeah, I think the more liberal they get, the less Christian they get. So there's not a lot of you get some of these really weird churches with like a lesbian priests and like rainbow robes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah, reminds me of the thing we did.
Yeah, but there are also churches that haven't gone that far, but are still like relatively conservative and evangelical. But there's still a lot of stuff going on that
Yeah, but you can tell if you ask them what led you to this net decision about how they perform their services, it's always the same rationalizations that the rainbow lesbian priests do.
Yeah.
So on a certain moral level, they kind of work on the same tool set.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh yeah, I mean we're seeing how a lot of these churchmen, even among evangelicals, are being really cucky about like saying we need to bring in more refugees and we need to encourage more race mixing, or I don't know. Well, maybe not encourage it, but like even you have people like Russell Moore and all those.
Russell Moore.
Russell Moore blocked me on Twitter.
He finally blocked me too. I've been harassing him for a long time.
Hey guys, fill me in. Who's Russell Moore?
He's like president of the Southern Baptist, and he's like the media's pet evangelical conservative, well, quote unquote conservative.
Oh, you may.
Isn't the Southern Baptist a pretty conservative denomination?
Well, it's becoming pretty cucky under his leadership. I mean, the guy is also paid off by George Soros.
Is he?
That's why he blocked me. I asked him how his accepting funding from George Soros might have affected his stance on, refugees and mass migration of foreigners. And just like that, calls me a neo-Nazi and blocks me on Twitter. So,
wow. Yep.
I don't know. I can't trust a man who thinks that I am a neo-Nazi.
You're the first Chinese neo-Nazi I met.
He's an honorary Aryan.
Did he actually call you a neo-Nazi?
Yeah.
He actually called me a neo-Nazi.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I really have some suspicions about Russell Moore. Like I know this sounds like some sort of tinfoil hat thing, but he does. Like if you read his Twitter feed, which I can't read anymore because he's blocked me, but if you actually read his Twitter feed and look at what he says, he seems a little bit off. I wonder if he's really a sincere Christian, or like if he's like he seems like he's playing the part of a Christian almost, like just some guy who's acting it out. It's just
there
weird.
comes a point. There comes a point on this part of the internet where you've seen so much stuff, you just gotta accept the tinfoil hat, man. Like it's all real.
Yeah, it's like,
Just-
God, I don't even know. It wouldn't surprise me. That's all.
9/11 was an inside job.
Everything was an inside job forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't go down that path too much, but I'm just saying, if it turned out he was just a fake Christian being hired to play a role, I wouldn't be surprised. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Well, I
Surprising
think
the
he's
least.
probably sincere. I just think he's badly mistaken.
Yeah, there's a
Possibly,
certain-
but
Well,
yes, yeah.
I mean, he has to know that if he's receiving funding from George Soros, it's for a reason.
well, yeah. So the question just is like, how much of his own BS does he believe?
Exactly.
I mean, it's like he's just a paid operative, is kind of how it seems.
Like
Yeah.
I'm sure on some level he probably like just rationalizes to himself like, oh, if I tell these lies for the greater good, maybe he really believes all the lies and that's why he gets paid for it. Who knows? I mean, that's between, you know.
People are very good at rationalizing, and we know this just from the people that we know, so that's not news.
Yeah, we know it from ourselves sometimes too. I'm sure we've all caught
Sometimes we find
ourselves.
out about ourselves. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've all caught ourselves at one point, be like, wait a minute, I'm full of it here.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, have you heard the whole thing about John Piper saying that, like, if somebody tries to kill him and his family, he would give them a gospel tract or something?
I don't think I've heard that, but I know John Piper's pretty much become a total cuck too, so
Yeah.
I don't. But didn't John Piper also like talk about moving to a diverse, a very vibrant neighborhood and
Yeah.
putting his family in danger just because that's what Jesus would want, or
No,
something?
no. There's the other guy that did that talked about that. His name's he's a white pastor. His name escapes me right now. Like he's cut from the same cloth as John Piper. He's kind of like a man. Let me.
Kind of a what?
He thinks along the same lines. He's cut from the same cloth. He wanted to like sorry. Let me try looking his name up. I think his name is
Some loud clicking.
oh, the rat. He wrote a book called Not a Fan.
Not a fan?
Yeah, he's trying to explain how he's not fan of Jesus. He's a no. Wait a minute, that's not the guy. There's another one. He wrote another book called The Radical. I'm trying to Google him right now. Oh, David Platt. That's his name. Yeah.
David, I don't know that name.
Yeah. Like, I remember a friend of mine that was really into him. Like,
So
he's a solid pastor, don't get me wrong, but he was saying something he said he purposely moved to a bad neighborhood and everything. He was once like a pastor of a mega church, but because he turned radical, he turned everybody away, which is certainly a step in the right direction, but he also said that he purposely moved to a bad neighborhood to put and risk his family just so he could reach people.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad to want to reach people, but I mean, I don't know. I think there's some things that are a little bit questionable in terms of doing so.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I know somebody who has a church in a bad neighborhood, but he lives with his family in a pretty good neighborhood, so, I mean, you could do both.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I remember we talked about some of these things in past hangouts. I think like about John Piper, how he's turning into an SJW and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm only familiar with the whole gun situation. Are there other things that he did that are kind of SJW-ish, other than the fact that he kind of puts his strong preaching, in the back closet to not turn off too many people?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know a lot about John Piper other than what I read on him from the sources I normally read. Like I know he's big on like racial stuff and he's big on like racial justice or whatever, and that's very
Yeah.
that's very like I can see how to your typical Christian that's a good thing, and as we've discussed already, like certainly we should be open to people of all races to witnessing to them or evangelizing to them, but like when it's becoming this sort of white people have to talk about how they sinned with slavery and everything white people did was evil in the past, like that's and now we have to atone for it or something. That's kind of taking it to a really grotesque level, and I think it's inappropriate.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I know that this is especially a tendency among the. Yeah, that's just my phone real quick.
Okay.
A lot of like non-denom charismatic type churches are now turning to that stuff.
Yeah.
You've noticed, right?
I've noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen how there's a lot of that stuff going on. I see a lot of, yeah, it's just becoming one of these issues where, I mean, the thing about race is like I think it's become more of a in-your-face issue in the last decade or so, or really since Obama became elected.
True.
Everything started getting ratcheted up, and now it's like it's become one of those issues where you're always forced to think about it, and like you can either go in the more right-wing direction, like a lot of us here, or you can become basically like well, we should support Black Lives Matter or some BS like that, even though they're basically a communist anti-Christian organization.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm kind of radical about this, but I believe that all leftism is satanic, like all left-wing stuff is satanic.
That's not very radical. That's mainstream Christianity. That's basic Christianity.
Well, it might be just radical to some people, but like the more I see, the more I become convinced that this is true. Like it's just leftism is just like a destructive force, is all it is. It just destroys.
Okay, just look at the reaction to this Orlando shooting.
What about it?
You're absolutely right, and to show you how, just look at the reaction to this Orlando shooting, where the narrative now is you either support the radical LGBT stuff or you are pro-terrorism. Like,
right, it's a really false dichotomy.
Yeah, that's
they bait you with this stuff, and to explain your nuanced position, your third way position, now it requires more than a soundbite, but people live off of just sound bites.
Yeah,
that's all that liberalism is, just a collection of sound bites that feel good to people. We don't really think out their ideology very deeply. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that.
Yeah, there is very little room for nuanced positions nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, when I talk to people on Twitter a lot of the time, it seems like people just simplify what you say, like so.
Well, to be fair, Twitter is only allows for 150 words or something.
140 characters.
Okay.
So it's pretty. Yeah.
Even on Facebook, where there's no excuse for that type of crap, people still, pretty much smug post and everything, and do the SJW posting. And I mean, I've can't count how many times I've refuted the same bad arguments from liberal Christians about how Jesus loved the sinners. Like,
Yeah.
I had to explain to them that Jesus loved them in a very specific way, not in some amorphous way.
Yeah, because you gotta explain to them that love doesn't just take the form of, hey, do whatever you want. It means
Yeah.
you want what's best for the person. Sometimes that means they don't get what they want.
Yeah.
Because what they want is bad for them.
Yeah.
Right.
But you told them that, like, man, no. And like you said, people will just sum up your nuanced positions to just, oh, well, no, you just hate all gay people.
Yeah.
Jeez, whatever, man. Like, I gotta, like, explain this to you. I gotta, like, take you to an ethics course through a Facebook post here.
Yeah, that's... Yeah, it's very frustrating, you know?
Yeah, it can get very frustrating.
Yeah.
What's
It's
that?
like, it's getting to a certain point that it's a waste of time engaging with these people because you're never gonna, like, reach a consensus. They're not gonna listen to anything you have to say, and they're always gonna find a way to twist your words and use it against you.
I think somebody clicking something. Hold on. Sorry. Oops.
I was just sending the link to William. I don't know if, well, actually I had myself muted, so I don't know if
No, it's fine.
you could have heard that.
I just had the window open over here. It's fine. But yeah.
And speaking of the Orlando shooting, have you noticed how the news, the mainstream media, is trying to find some way to explain away the Islamic connection to his shootings?
Like,
Like,
oh,
they're
he's actually gay, or he's actually this and that. Like, oh, dude. Is he self-hating gay? That's the problem, because you aren't accepting him enough.
Yeah, yeah, and also the whole thing about, like, oh, he was violent. He used to hit other kids in third grade. I think that was all of us. I think we all used to hit other kids in third grade.
Exactly. Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the transgender stuff, where you'll tell them, about the damage you might be doing to these people, but the only argument they have is, well, listen, if you don't accept that they're gonna kill themselves at record rates, like that's not an argument. You're just appealing to, like, a pity emotion here. You aren't telling me anything real. You aren't really giving me as to why this is true or why it isn't true.
Yeah, and the suicide rate is actually higher after the surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen that too. But you try telling them that, that's a whole different bag of worms. Because then you gotta, like, well, where'd you get that step from? Some radical site, some radical Christian bigot site. Like, okay, dude. So truth only matters when you say, and when I say it's bigoted. Okay.
Yeah, they pretty much engage in a presuppositional apologetic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're familiar with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with presuppositional apologetics if Christians are using it because Christians have the truth.
Well, you tell them, yeah, because they come at you, well, this is the truth. What are you gonna do about it? And that may be good to, like, if both parties accept it, but they got the foundation of what they believe.
Right.
That's the way to approach it. Is really hit it at the root.
Yeah, it's pretty much like what Greg Bonson does and what Cy Brugengate does is that, like, they pretty much when they do their apologetics, they're doing an internal critique of the other person's worldview. Like, you know, for example, most atheists believe in the ultimate authority of their own experience, and a way to throw them off is pretty much asking them, how do they know that they're not brain of that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot that I could get into with that whole apologetic, but
yeah, it's definitely a big it's a big area of study. It's really interesting as well if you got the patience for it. But.
Yeah. Do you have you studied apologetics?
I did during my whole agnostic phase, where I was really trying to dig into this, this whole this religion thing, I guess you can call it. Yeah,
Right.
I was really getting into the nitty, but some of it, to be honest, it was pretty shoddy. Some of it was definitely like just very shoddy logical work, but you know, a friend of mine asked me, so what epistemological process did you use to get to that, your conclusion and buy into religion, basically? And I told him it wasn't really that kind of a process.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only logic yourself to a certain point. There's not really a. I'm not gonna get to that. That's a whole different area of discussion in this hangout, I think. But yeah, it's.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We have not to interrupt, but we have William Scott just joined us. Say hello, William.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, William.
You're a little soft, but
Yeah, I don't have my superlative mic anymore. I've got this rock concert grade one.
oh really?
Yeah, I used to have a nice condenser mic, but my son has it right now. Is
Oh,
that better? Or is that okay?
Yeah, you sound
you
good.
sound fine.
Okay.
How's it
Yeah.
going, William?
Well, thanks. I'm tired, but I'm here.
All right. Well, you don't have to say much if you don't have much to say, but it's good to have you with us to help give you a chance to speak. If we've
I'll
been
catch
talking
up.
about-
I haven't been able to follow or listen along. I've just literally been here for about 5 minutes maybe.
Mm.
So I'm
Okay.
not sure where
Well,
we
yeah.
are. Is race still the subject, or?
We kind of go off a little bit, but that's still the main theme of this hangout, and we've talked about how a lot of Christians have been sort of getting on the quote-unquote racial justice bandwagon because the issue's kind of been shoved in their face now more than it has in a long time. So, I mean, I guess race really is just the kind of issue where most people don't think about it. They don't really need to think about it until they do, basically. So, like in times where diversity has become the sort of like liberal imperative, then it's being forced on them, and it's become one of those things where you can't escape it, and everything in the West is becoming racially politicized. So a lot of churches, it's like they're either forced to, ignore it as best they can and cling to some sort of conservatism, or they go full SJW on the issue. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier. And that's how it led off to us talking about how liberals think.
I think a big factor in this is that liberalism has kind of hijacked compassion.
That's
Yeah.
true.
So
That's definitely true.
so Christians will see these these causes, these social justice causes, and they'll be like, well, that's the nice thing to do. I should do that. But sometimes it could be a bit more complicated than just that, than just being nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they ball gagged it and wrapped it up in duct tape in a chair in the basement.
And did unspeakable things to it, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Glenn Beck once said that if your church talks about social justice, you should leave.
Yeah.
yep,
I
you
agree.
should.
I mean, if a Mormon can come to that conclusion, what excuse does a
Anyone want that?
Trinitarian Christian have?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
if
I know.
you're talking about social justice in the sense of, having
In the
prayer
sense
in
of Old
schools
Testament
again,
law?
yeah, I'm all for that.
You mean in the sense of the Mosaic Code? Stoning women for adultery?
Getting rid of usury, yeah, I like that.
Quote, usury, quote.
Yeah, that's a big topic on my blog. It's called reconstructingchristendom.wordpress.com.
Okay.
If you want to check it out, tell me
Yeah,
what
I'll
you
link to it in
think.
the show notes.
Yeah, so far I put 3 articles on there. Like, you know, 2 of them have been a response to Todd Lewis's debate that I had with him, and one has been talking exactly about this issue of the evangelical left. You know, how they're conceding to SJWism.
Yeah, I think there's a hunger for relevance that happens in the liberal churches, the Anglican church that I'm in. There's a desire, you know, after a century of kind of taking a beating to kind of stand up and say, "Oh, we're good. We
Me
do
too.
all the right things. We meet all
Right.
the
I want
right."
a virtue signal.
Yeah, so it's just virtue signaling about on subjects that now they can. But I mean, it's basically everything. I mean, what is it that they really stand for that's different? It's just kind of a
It's kind of a mix of Me Tooism and like world worship.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically a social club, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah, and you can't have. I mean, the thing in terms of real social justice, you can't have it without, uh, you know, adherence to natural law. You can't have justice that's based on fantasy. That's not
Exactly.
justice. That only
Yeah.
brings more pain and more social disorder.
Yeah.
Real justice does not involve the mutilation of genitals.
And you know,
Yeah.
I remember once on the subject. Oh, sorry.
Arjun brought this up on the last Patrician podcast. He was talking about like how, you know, you shouldn't try to make something that you have to provide a right, you know, such as clean water. Like South Africa has a right to clean water, and it's like one of the, you know, it's a complete hellhole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing that annoys me about the left is they often will say, "This is a right. This is my right." It's like, well, who says it's your right? Like, I have a right to free healthcare. I have a right to free education.
Yeah.
Like, says who?
I have a
Somebody
right
has
to
provide that for
broadband
you.
internet.
Yeah.
Well, I have the right to not being bombarded by pornography on the street, but I don't see that right being respected.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so true.
I would love that.
It's the unchangeable channel.
The changeable
It-
social channel of constant porn in the culture. Yeah.
Yeah, it literally
turn it off.
is. Yeah.
I wish I could do that. Yeah.
Oh, maybe move to Amish village or something.
I get told that constantly. Well, if you don't like it, why don't you just become Amish?
Because I have to deal with the neckbeards.
What? Neckbeards? You said?
Too many neckbeards. No, no Amish for me.
I can't really grow a good beard, so.
Besides, I'm Chinese. They're all, you know, German or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've heard
Well,
that.
you could have you could have a long, silky Asian beard.
I could. I dream of it. It may or may not come when I'm in my 50s. You know. I'm not gonna grow a beard now. That's just not proper for Orientals. We don't grow beards until we've gotten wives and stuff.
You gotta earn the beard.
That is true. You don't see many young Orientals who have facial hair.
No, yeah, actually,
Well-
when my father sees Chinese, you know, undergrads with beards, he disapproves. It's kind of presumptuous to grow the facial hair of a married man when you're you know, still in school and stuff like that.
So you have to earn your right?
Yeah, basically. He doesn't have. I mean, he shaves, but he says if you're going to do the facial hair thing, don't try to look like someone you're not.
Wow. So it's a literal cultural thing
Yeah.
in the Chinese community.
Is that right, Lee?
Yeah, basically, it's true. You look at Chinese art, and you're not going to see beards on young men. That's just not how we do things.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Is a 5 o'clock shadow okay?
Uh,
I think it's
I
standard.
don't know. You're not gonna have much 5 o'clock shadow.
I think it's standard college fare.
Like, does it take 1 year for you guys to grow a 5 o'clock shadow?
The 5-year shadow.
Well, so I will say that at least one of my uncles has to shave once a fortnight.
Wow. Damn.
I usually shave once a week, but by the time by the time I do shave, it's usually gotten kind of whiskery. I mean, so it's like I could stand to shave more often, but definitely not every day. I don't need to do it that often.
Yeah. I shave on litany days, so that's Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
That's a good way to remember it.
Yeah, you don't want to go all stubbly.
Yeah.
Hold on real
So
quick.
Yeah, Sam, if you ever need to leave, you can just tell us in the text chat. You don't need to announce it. Like, if you're just stepping away for a second. Maybe you can't hear us now, but whatever.
Threats.
Yeah. So, I think I was going to say something, but I forgot what it was. Okay, you're back, William? Yeah. Oh. Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
Everybody's gone.
Hey, sorry for all our listeners. It's a little bit weird right now. We're just people are stepping in and out, so we're just making sure we know who's here and all that.
It's more of an open house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been
It's an
going for
actual
hour and a half,
hangout.
so- Yeah. I mean, yeah. This kind of these hangouts kind of blur the line between podcast and hangout, just like
Yeah,
general
it's
open forum.
informal.
Yeah. Like I do try to make them like. I do try to come up with topics we can discuss so that it doesn't just go all over the place, like for every single one. But what's that banging?
Oh, sorry, that was me.
Oh, okay,
Oops.
yeah. So
The first episode of my podcast, I had my phone beneath my mic, and it was making these giant static disruptions like every few minutes or so. And for some reason, I couldn't hear it during the recording process, but everyone else could, and so I didn't think it was a problem. But then once I sit down to edit the thing, I just hear this constant. Bwah, bwah. It's
oh
terrible.
wow. Yeah, I've only listened to one episode of your podcast, and I did like it. You guys seem pretty smart, so it's a good
Which
listen.
episode was it?
The most recent one, number 14, I guess.
Oh yeah, the Everything is Bad one. There's very little prep for that one. I think the best one we've done so far is I think it was episode 12, one about VR.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I have to go through the archives and all that. Didn't you have Monarchy on one?
Yeah, it was a Game of Thrones episode where we just had him.
Okay.
It was actually very short because there's only so much you can talk about one TV show for so long.
Yeah, I saw that on Monarchy's channel he announced that he was a guest on your program, but
Yeah.
I didn't actually listen to it.
Yeah.
I listen to a ton of podcasts, so I don't always have time to listen to
Yeah.
all of them.
Yeah, definitely. Same here. There's a lot of them that I had to skip a few episodes, or I got to catch up eventually. It really varies.
Yeah, I know that TRS has all these podcasts, and I listen to a lot of them, but
Yeah.
sometimes, even then, I'm kind of like, I just can't listen to the whole thing.
Yeah, there's so many. They have
Yeah,
a huge network now.
some I've never listened to just because they just didn't look interesting to me, but
Mhm.
whatever.
Like the more regional ones, I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't listen to Radio Free Skyrim. I listened to it before, but it wasn't good enough that I felt like I have to listen to every single episode. Just put it on if there's nothing else, but whatever.
But the next episode is going to be the one that we've been planning for a while. So I'm never going to be shilling that one everywhere as much as I can because it's going to be
Okay.
it's going to be a good one. Hopefully.
I hope so too. Yeah, I always put a link. I'll put a link to your stuff on in the show notes. That's what I usually
Awesome.
do for these. I put them. I give everybody a link to their sites and stuff. So
Awesome.
it's a good
Thank
way
you.
to. Yep. So let's see. Any other questions about race and Christianity we can think of? I mean,
Did you guys cover any kind of how to? I mean, what is the justification for the racial position? I have my own kind of way of doing that.
what is it?
And what is mine?
Well, like, what would you say your position is for race and for Christianity and how it relates?
Well, I find I guess I go back to natural law, in that I'm not sure exactly my position on creation. I mean, sometimes I'm a strong creationist, and other times I'm whatever, evolution happened, and then somehow we got to here, and this is what we do, and and but I do find that I guess the arguments against a racial segregation, at least to some extent, I find them to be kind of just lazy thinking, and I don't find that they're actually bringing peace to the world. When I did that series on my folkways there on the Beatitudes during Lent, I sort of unearthed a lot of stuff that I actually found kind of so challenging. I've kind of like put it away, like it's almost too, like the kind of discipline that I found in there. I found too, I found it too challenging. But one thing I found was that kind of gave me a sense of being able to theologically justify being both racial and being and dealing with the issue of sex differences in terms of capacities and dispositions and so forth, is that in the Beatitudes you go through, one of the Beatitudes is blessed are the righteous, and without getting into too much, I ended up somehow, I can't remember exactly how, but arguing that basically righteousness is bound to natural law, that you can't have a righteousness that isn't based on doing what is right in the world. It's not just sort of rules or laws made that you just conform to for obedience sake, but actually you conform to them because they actually conform to the best life.
Yeah.
And so
I very much agree with that.
So then that's good. Thanks. So that natural, and then later on in the Beatitudes we come to blessed are the peacemakers. I mean, if anybody has time to listen, either I have most of them on my Folkways YouTube site, but I also have them written on the WordPress site. That blessed are the peacemakers is the second to last beatitude. And how can you bring peace unless you are again conforming to the actual state of what things are in the world? If you're just thinking you're bringing peace because you have good feelings, or because this is what you think is right, or because it's tolerant, or some kind of normative criteria rather than the empirical criteria of the real conditions of the world, what people are like, what different populations of people are like, what are their capacities, how do they get along when they live adjacent, how can you make peace as a Christian if you're just sort of forcing peace where you're actually just making us. So this is kind of how I have come to justify it, that it's not the kind of Marxist leftist SJW kind of approach to anti-racism and to multiculturalism is actually really just setting up conditions for future violence. It's not actually bringing peace. However much
Right.
they might shout that out and shout us down and call us the haters, they are actually setting up conditions for hate in the future that will lead to a great deal of bloodshed, and there already are. I mean, there already is bloodshed.
Yeah, and that was something I was saying earlier before you got on, that sometimes, goodness is a little more complicated than just being nice to somebody. Some goodness means you refrain from giving someone what they want, or that you don't just you think like, oh, by mixing everybody together, that's good because then you're being nice to everybody. But it's a little more complicated than that. Because if you mix everybody together too much, like you said, conflicts arise, and you're breaking the sort of law that God built into the universe. He built the thing with a system.
And also, niceness most of the time is just self-preservation.
Yeah, but also like it's like you were saying about natural law, that this is a universe built with a system in it. It's not just a free-for-all, and you have to follow the laws that were set out before you, and that does mean a certain set of natural law. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not infinitely plastic to our desires.
Exactly.
Yeah, most liberals operate on a positive law basis. They think that law is just a social construct.
Yeah, because they believe.
They could change it however they wish.
Yeah, they even do this with the economy, where you hear this, these Sanderites and these kind of our leftists here in Canada, right? But he just puts us in debt because it's just a game. Well, yeah, in a way, the economy is a game, but if you can't just sort of change the rules midstream and not have deleterious effect on how the game is the outcome of the game, and you can't remove all the motivation from the game and have it still be a game that anybody wants to play. And they just honestly believe they can just make anything up and then just put it into the world.
Wait a minute, am I getting this right? You're saying that the rules of economics, the laws of economics are just social constructs, like the laws about scarcity, supply and demand don't really apply, they're just made up? Is that what they're arguing?
They generally tend to think so, yeah, because they don't think past a handout. They don't really I mean, essentially we have the moral thinking of women and children. I mean, that's what the world is governed by. Basically, the cared for want to define how they're cared for, without paying any attention to how to create that which is, the surplus that is their care.
Yeah. So also, let me ask you a question. So, do they believe that 1 + 1 = 2 is also a social construct?
I think when they're high, yeah.
What are numbers, man?
Just most of the time.
So
actually, I have seen.
We just say that you have more value than another. Like that. Sorry, go on.
I've seen a course description like that at UC Berkeley. It's a course.
It's just, what are numbers, man?
And well, not quite, but it's a linguistics class about. Well, he does a lot of research on metaphors and stuff like that, and the course description, though, for one of these linguistics or cognitive science classes, included the phrase, why mathematics is not an objective feature of the universe.
Jeez.
So what is an objective feature of the universe according to this person?
Well, I'm not sure, and George Lakoff is a pretty distinguished professor in the field of, research on metaphor. So I wouldn't. He may not mean what he seems to mean in this course description, but when I saw this, I was I was rather surprised to see that string of words.
So he's a metaphorologist? Is that what you?
Uncle, look, sometimes a 5 can identify as a 7, and you can't tell.
Who are you to say that 2 really has more value than 1?
My 2 is as good as your 1, bigot.
Well, it is true that people who do pure math, there's a lot more to be proved in saying that 1 + 1 = 2. But I'm not sure that people like George Lakoff have that kind of background in pure math to be able to argue about those kinds of things. I don't think many people are qualified to really make those kinds of arguments about both math and linguistics, really.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that people in the economics department are generally more conservative than people in the social science department, and I would think that the same thing would be true in the math department since they're forced to deal with something that's objective and never changing, while social science varies depending on the whoever's teaching it. That they could just pretty much do. They're free to do whatever mental gymnastics they want in social sciences. What do you guys think? What is that true from what you guys know?
Well, I don't know. People in math departments aren't even treating with. They're not even dealing with numbers a lot of the time. They're dealing with groups and rings and topology and stuff like that. So I don't know.
Okay.
But I'd say, yeah, the at least maybe not anymore, but the economic department, I think, tends to be as certainly right of the sociology department. But
Sociology, it's almost just like pure Marxism. There's very little difference between it. I mean, I've taken I took a few sociology classes back in my college days, and it was just like I was just being propagandized to the entire time.
Yeah. And
Well, I'll take a real Marxist over these political correctness people.
yeah, that's true. Actually, I was listening to a lecture by Gary North on the Keynes. Are you guys familiar with Keynesianism?
a little bit.
Keynesianism.
Keynes, John
Yeah.
I know that
John Maynard Keynes.
he was
Yeah.
like the guy who supported like deficit spending and things like that, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And, pouring more money into the money supply, printing money, and, causing inflation. And he was talking about like how the Austrian School of Economics is now becoming very popular, but because they're outside the establishment, the establishment is all Keynesian. It's a very interesting lecture. I'm gonna find it and forward it to you.
Well, I've seen people write about how Hitler basically did Keynesian stuff, and it did work for a while. So, I don't know. I'm a little bit leery of people from Presbyterian quarters trying to push libertarian stuff too.
Yeah, I see what you mean because libertarianism is a little tone deaf.
Mm-hmm. A
Yeah,
lot of autism in those circles.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, as a nationalist, I also tend to be at least somewhat more socialistic than a lot of people on the American spectrum. So they're going to, I don't know, sometimes I talk and they'll think I'm a commie, so...
Right. Do you think that's what led you from Presbyterianism to Anglicanism?
No. That wasn't even in my... Well, I mean, not really anyway. I would say I, flirted briefly with libertarianism, and I always saw, libertarians who were, pro-pot and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, I have no interest in cannabis, okay? People, that's not the kind of libertarianism that's ever appealed to me, but, I kind of considered, for example, pulling the state out of regulating marriage and stuff like that, and, well, I came to be convinced that that was not the right way of viewing government regulation of marriage. Maybe that was around, well, I guess that was around the same time that I was becoming Anglican. I was pulling back from those kinds of ideas, but I don't think that's really about not being Presbyterian so much as it was actually becoming Anglican and supporting actually the existence of an established church and explicit recognition of the kingship of Christ in a people's governance, stuff like that.
Right. You sound kind of similar to the Covenanters in that regard, because they also support the same thing, except with a Presbyterian government.
Right, so on that spectrum I'd be more with Richard Hooker than I would be with the Scottish Covenanters.
Yeah. That would be an interesting discussion for a different time.
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody else in this conversation has no idea what we were talking about. Me and
I have
Lou.
like a fourth of an idea of what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
A 16th.
Not a lot. Here.
16th. I guess that's more than the percentage that I'm white. But you know, I might be 3% white.
Hudson Taylor's family? Or
No. Well, I mean, well, of course they're originally white, and some of them intermarried with the Chinese. But no, so the thing is, both
You have
my
white
brother and I
privilege, though.
have, we have red facial hairs. I mean, not all of them, but some of our facial hair is in the red range. It's somewhere between auburn and strawberry blonde. So where we got this from? Well, probably not the Chinese.
I should
your
go
mother has
23andMe.
facial hair?
Sorry?
Did you say your mother has facial hair?
No. My brother.
Oh, your brother. I thought you said your mother. I'm like, wait, what?
That would be shocking, especially for a Chinese woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, my friend that I used to talk to a while back, he was talking about how he once saw in his class, in his college class, Asian girls with hairy legs. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
that's kind of like finding a white rhinoceros.
Some girls have hairy legs. Yeah, they have more hair on their legs than I do.
Chinese girls?
Occasionally. I've seen them.
Mm.
Well,
So
it's
have you
fascinating
ever taken a
conversation
DNA
about hair.
test? I was going to say, LUE-YEE, have you actually taken a DNA test ever? Or
I haven't because I'm interested in doing it, but the thing is, I don't want to have the results come back to me telling me that I'm 97% East Asian or something. I'm going to be like, yeah, okay, thanks for nothing. I paid $100 for this, and you're telling me I'm 97% Asian. Okay, yeah, I knew that. So unless they can tell me, you know, something more fine-grained, something about specific, you know, haplogroups and you know, something that might actually be able to trace what kind of non-Chinese ancestry I might have, and something that even something that differentiates between northern and southern Chinese genes. I'd like to see that.
well, there might be different companies
don't
that
do
offer
that yet?
different. I'm not sure. I think different companies have different levels of specificity
Yeah.
that they can offer.
Yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
taken one either, but I'm interested in doing so if I ever get the money.
So until there's enough specificity that I'm seeing, I don't think I'll be paying for that.
You should check out the Ancestry.com test. They have a really in-depth result system. It's pretty cool.
If
Basically,
I
Yeah,
do, I also want to get my
Mormons are the
parents
Jews,
to
right? Isn't that?
see which things come from whom.
Actually, before the Second Temple was destroyed, they had they were keeping records of the genealogies. And now
Who did that?
the what?
What were you saying? Who did that?
The Jews were keeping records of their genealogies before the Second Temple was destroyed.
This is extra biblical, or these are the.
Part of it's biblical because they were required to keep the tribes separate, so they could know who's from which tribe.
Well, that's true.
But there could be cross marriage. There could be marriage between the
Right.
tribes, but then you join the tribe when you.
But you keep the land within the tribe and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I guess in those days they actually could have gone to the temple to check out the genealogy of Jesus,
Yeah,
since it's recorded in Matthew and Luke.
yeah, that's true. But right now, because they don't know who's a Levite or anything, if they want to rebuild the temple, they can't reestablish the Levitical priesthood, which they're kind of screwed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless they can trust the surnames.
I've actually
Yeah,
heard
it's
that
true.
supposedly Hasidic Jews can tell you which tribe they come from. I think that's what I heard once.
Yeah, I think most of them are actually European.
Yeah, the whole Khazar theory.
No, it's not Kaiser. I mean, Southeastern European, stuff like that, or Eastern European.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like a cut and dry, if this person is a Jew, then he's 100% Jew, 100% descended from Abraham.
Yeah.
For all we know, his ancestors could have been converts.
It's true. There's never 100% anything. That's part of the nature of it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, are we running out of things to say here? I mean, I don't know if we want to wrap up. I mean, I thought that we've been going for 2 hours now. I don't know if that's too short for anybody, but I mean, I don't want to end too early if people have more to say, but all these pauses are kind of.
No, I think.
The one question I want to ask is, how do conservative evangelical Christians stand up to race politics, white privilege, Black Lives Matters, without going to the extreme of becoming a white nationalist or a neo-Nazi or something?
Well, in my experience, white evangelical conservatives, of which is like the background I came from, they basically never have to deal with those issues, so they don't really know how to deal with those issues, I guess.
Right.
So I mean,
are you talking
I'm not
about
sure
Are you talking about the older generation or the younger generation?
Well, admittedly, I don't really keep up with the evangelical world as much as I used to, just because I guess I never really completely felt like at home there. Although, I don't know, but I mean, the older generation, I think what we think of as white evangelical, that's a very Midwestern idea. That's a very I've been thinking about this a little bit about how what we think of as, well, I guess if you were following the primaries, we noted that a lot of the Midwestern states went for Ted Cruz because he was more evangelical friendly, and there's a lot of talk about that, if you guys remember. And I think it's because a lot of those people are the kind of people who don't really think about race that much. They just have the general thought of racism is bad, don't be a racist. But they mostly live in white neighborhoods among white people, so they don't really, to them, it's not a huge issue that they have to deal with. So to them,
Yeah.
it's just so like with I don't know how a lot of them are going to react when this stuff gets shoved in their face, other than like I was saying, maybe a lot of them do just kind of feel like going SJW is it's the only way they can not feel guilty about taking a position, because if they think that becoming like a white nationalist or something is their only alternative, then they just feel like most evangelicals are not like deep theological thinkers, so they don't. I guess like any unmoored group, they're gonna go with the flow of greater society.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's a good answer, but
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
it's.
their
I
sense of
think it's.
transcendence is pretty pedestrian.
Yeah,
do you,
that's why it's
what is
easy for them to become atheists.
What's that?
That's why it's easy for evangelicals to convert to atheism.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the kind of school that I grew up in, with that very like not very deep theology, you know, theological thought. It was all just like, hey, do this or you'll go to hell. And
Yeah.
it's like what? And the people
And
who
almost
ran the school and the church, they themselves didn't have much more to offer than that. So any questions were just kind of met with, I don't know, just do it.
yeah, there's a
No.
fear of discussion almost too. Like and yet it's quite the opposite. You know, the discussion is what will keep the thing going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From my perspective, it has been more like, Jesus loves you, and you just have to believe in Jesus and trust in Him. I mean, there
There's
was
a
yeah.
there's
This
a
is
great
this,
essay.
like, don't worry about those big questions.
It's like that guy says, I think Christian Smith is his name. Where he calls it moralistic therapeutic theism.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty much. I've heard that word before. I'm not
Really,
familiar with that specific person you mentioned, but I've heard that word thrown around in evangelical circles.
if you shoot me an email, I'll send you the file. It's pretty interesting. It's short. It's 12 pages. It's a section from like a longer work, but it's really interesting. I'll post my email here.
Okay.
yeah. Can I introduce an idea?
Okay.
Great,
Yeah, go ahead.
gracious host. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I had myself muted there.
Just kind of bringing up race, and then also maybe, peacemaking, I guess. I have a lot of the Anglicans really pat themselves on the back about South Africa and the collapse of apartheid, because Trevor Huddleston was involved, and Tutu and so forth. So we got this kind of feather in our hat that we did some good thing there, and it's about race, and it's about bad white people and good oppressed black people, and it satisfies all the kind of, oddly enough, the North American kind of narrative in a way, right? The kind of civil rights narrative, which has been exported everywhere. It's in Europe now. These Europeans who've never had anything to do with this stuff are now just overwhelmed with this white guilt and this kind of, as if they had Jim Crow laws or something.
I thought the Europeans were dealing with it for a long time, especially the Germans, because of the Nazis and World War II and the Holocaust.
I suppose so, yeah. But this very particular kind of black-white thing, they didn't really have blacks to deal with. But I mean, obviously in South Africa they do, and I can hardly look at. I mean, I follow some of these sites on WordPress and also Twitter, and the stuff is so horrific that they show. It's almost too much. It's almost a barrier to access to the information, even for me, who's totally on board. Like I know the real, or at least I think I understand better understanding of the story than the standard.
Are you talking about South Africa?
Yeah, South Africa in particular. I mean, and what kind of moral duty do we have? I mean, in the 90s when everybody was bringing, and the late 80s and 90s when everybody was bringing forward this stuff about apartheid and how bad it was, and they were trying to make awareness. Now we just see these people being slaughtered, and nobody's people are trying to bring it forward, but like I say, the way they're doing it is almost prohibitive to the message, because it's just the kind of thing that's so horrible to look at these, like, cut up bodies and stuff, and these these raped and dismembered women, and it's just so horrific that it's almost like I don't ever think that that's actually happening.
Are you talking about white South African people who were killed after apartheid ended because of
this kind of what is called often a genocide down there now that's happening, where you have much higher death count on the white side now than there ever was even on the black side during apartheid.
Yeah, like
much more social disorder, decay. I mean, we were talking about natural law, race, and all these issues. I mean, South Africa is the petri dish for this stuff. So
yeah,
what moral duty do we have as Christians to try to articulate what's happening there? It's also kind of a test case. But
yeah, that's definitely true. I've heard like Afrikaner farmers have been suffering badly.
Oh yeah, families murdered, daughters raped. I mean, it's insane what's happening there, and we're still patting our, as an Anglican church. I went to the we did this kind of a local what's it called, eulogy for Mandela when he died, and it was just all sing the song, wonderful man, everything's great, we did good. That's that. There's never a conversation about how things are worse there for everybody now, and it's all because of an ignorant perspective on race.
Right.
For no other reason. There is no other cause than misunderstanding the difference between populations and the capacity of different populations to do certain things.
Right.
And
I'd say there is a second
to
cause.
Accept it. What's that?
I'd say there is a second cause, and it's what you were saying earlier, that it's an ignorance of natural law. It's an ignorance of what good is. Because they see it as like to judge people on race, or not judge people, to assert, to look at and notice and act on the differences of race. That's restricting freedom, and that's the highest good in their eyes. Natural law isn't a thing you have to follow because it's the right thing. It's a restriction on your freedom of whatever. That's how they see it, at least.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like like we've been saying, kind of this whole broadcast is kind of like the lies of modernity have seeped into a lot of these Christian communities.
Yeah. The funny thing about natural law is that, like, the person that introduced it is John Locke, was a liberal and a Unitarian, and now all the Christians are now all about natural law. When natural law was first introduced, it was the liberal that introduced it.
I don't know about that. I've seen natural law in earlier texts, such as
Thomas Aquinas,
stuff by Richard Hooker and Althusius, and I think Aquinas, right?
Yeah, well, I mean natural theology, which was sort of also within the same realm.
Yeah,
so it's a certain interpretation of natural law that we see in Locke.
Yeah, like basically, I think Locke was the one that introduced the distinctively American brand of natural law that's a lot of constitutional conservatives hold to, which is basically the inalienable rights part. The concept of inalienable rights.
Yeah, I guess when I talk about it, I'm speaking of it quite differently than that. It's not
yeah.
Not my understanding of it. Those are normative prescriptions they have, which may or may not conform to natural conditions, and I think they actually often don't.
Yeah, and John Locke was pretty conservative. Like he said that the inalienable rights are life, liberty, and property, and the founders took it a little further by saying life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And I think that's a step further because, I mean, there's no guarantee that you would. There's at least some guarantee you would have some property, but there's no guarantee that you would be able to pursue happiness. In a sense, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I wouldn't see it. I'd say that's looking at the individual too much. I mean,
Yeah.
To say that that's what natural law is about, to me, it's about, it's something to be discovered by reflecting upon the nature, the state of nature, and then to make decisions based on that. Those to offer people freedom of the right to property might conform to some other principles of natural law, that people are content when they have something to have personal dominion over, or something like this, that this actually leads to the best, most happy society. But to say that it is a right somehow normatively, I find kind of strange.
Yeah. And it's also not all people have property. There's no guarantee that you would ever own any property. So it doesn't make any sense to make it a right.
And not all properties are equal.
Yeah, but if you own a property, nobody has the right to take it away from you without due process.
I think that was the idea, not as in like you have a right to it, as in like you automatically get it granted to you or anything, but that you have certain rights to the property you end up getting.
Right.
Yeah, because I think the concept of rights today is more about like what is a state obligated to give me, as to it's a bit different. At least.
Okay. One question. Do you think the Lockean concept of rights inevitably led to modern liberalism?
I'd say it definitely didn't. It didn't help stop its progression, to say the least. I'd say it had some part of it, yeah.
Yeah, whether it was causal or just part of the.
Yeah, it's just such a complex descent. It's really hard to map out what caused what.
Yeah.
There was an interesting Red Ice discussion with the guy on there about Anglo-Saxon identity, and he basically talking about law becoming the abstraction which led to the destruction of racial identity. And also moving, that the population that moved to Britain was not that ended up being dominant there was not actually from there over the long hauls, so that their sense of identity was more based in their process of defining themselves legally than it was as tribally. So that's kind of interesting.
Are you talking about the Anglo-Saxons?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's on Red Ice. It's a fairly recent interview. I found it quite interesting.
Well, gentlemen, I have to mosey on off here.
All right, see you, Rick.
It's been a pleasure talking to all you.
You've
Yeah.
been a good guest.
Thank you.
Good to meet you. I don't think have we been on before together? I can't remember.
No, it's my first time on here.
Yeah, every single one of these, we've had at least one first-time participant, so it's a streak I like to keep going.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
starting
it's
to.
on the internet, but I'll try to. You have some podcasts up.
You can check out my site, romeisburning.show. Follow me on Twitter at romeisburningshow, something like that. I think I have it right. I'm not sure.
I think I may follow you actually already.
Oh yeah, cool stuff. All right, guys. See you later.
Have a good night.
Me too.
Thanks for coming. Oh, the dynamics suddenly changed. I guess there was a lot of air noise on Rick's mic or something. How's it? Speaking of mic sounds, does my mic sound okay? Is there air noise coming there?
Nope.
It sounds all right.
If I mute myself, does it change or?
No, I don't hear any drop off.
Okay. But yeah, I always keep a fan going on my laptop just so it doesn't overheat, and because it does that sometimes, and so I have my microphone, have my hand cupped around it to make sure there's no air blowing into it. So
Oh.
yeah, I'm always just worried that it's going to sound bad or something. So, any other subjects you guys have? Any other questions? Or does anybody in the text chat have any questions about race and Christianity they'd like us to answer or discuss or whatever? Got a second for that for the delay to reach them. It says we have 13 viewers, so I guess still got a lot of people out there.
Huh?
Yeah, I think this may have the most viewers of any hangout we've done so far, because it seems like usually we have single digits or something. We had a pretty good crowd in the text chat today, or the Spurred chat as they call it on TRS. I actually was saying that, like, it'd be fun to do a hangout, not necessarily a part of the Christian Hangout series, but one with all, like, people who have Asperger's or who have autism in some way, just to get a bunch of, like, Chateau Autiste types together and see what they would discuss. I mean, oftentimes it is very interesting to hear how people who've at least been diagnosed with it are very have interesting views on things. They have interpretations of things. Oh, and let's see, are we getting anything? Is Kek a demon? Well, I think Kek is just an Egyptian god, so I don't know where that fits in the theology of...
Combine the word catechism with the word demon.
It says, is Kek a demon? K-E-K. That's what source I said.
Are religions really universal, or do they inevitably take on cultural and ethnic practices?
Well, I think that there is definitely something to that. Like, I think that oftentimes some of the aesthetics will be an outgrowth of the culture. Like, it just happens when you have people separate from each other over time. It's hard to, like, really unify everybody who's, like, apart from each other, like, completely unify them. They're still going to have variations between them. I mean, like, look at the Orthodox Church, for instance. I mean, the Orthodox Church is it's one church, but, like, different nations within the church, like have different traditions and how they do the liturgy and things like that. So, but I mean, I don't know if any of the actual doctrine is different, or like I guess I've heard there are some branches of the Orthodox Church that have slightly different theological views, but I don't know if it's serious enough that they would consider themselves completely different churches.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to find sources on Orthodox theological views.
Really?
Because not hard, but compared to Roman Catholicism and Protestantism, they don't have as much theological writings. At least from
comparison?
Yeah, from what I've seen.
LUE-YEE left. Oh, well,
Yeah.
I don't know if his phone gave out or he. Well, thanks for coming, LUE-YEE, if you're listening or whatever. Glad you had.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, go on, Sam.
Yeah. So, would you say that's true from your experience that generally Orthodox don't like to focus a lot on theology? They just call it all mystical. Like they all say it's all a mystery. There
definitely is something to that, because I think that in just Eastern European cultures are less intellectual and less scientific than Western European cultures, so there's not as much of a drive. There's not that sort of impulse in the people who practice it. So they don't, like, I know that, I mean, I'm sure some Catholics might take issue with this, I don't know, but, like, I think the Orthodox Church's narrative in many ways is that the Catholics, or the Western European people, are they're too focused on being, like, empirical about things, so that they feel like they have to come up with an explanation for everything, and so that mentality leads you down the path of questioning everything and eventually rebelling. So it's better to, like, say, like, some things are just mysterious and mystical, and let's just leave it at that, and let's not try to explain it. So
Yeah, I've heard that explanation before from Eastern Orthodox.
I know that Todd Lewis said something like, well, he's in a conversation I had with Todd. He said that every Eastern Orthodox person he's ever met has been completely irrational, like in the way they argue for things. So
Yeah.
I mean, I know Todd. He's got his own. He's a very
Yeah,
he's a more analytical guy, I guess.
Well, I mean, he draws some weird conclusions himself. Like, it's not like, it's sort of like the whole, especially if the whole thing about, like, it's okay for civil governors to punish evil and serve in that role, and it's ordained by God as long as the governor is not a Christian. It's the most irrational argumentation I've heard, because, I mean, doesn't the civil governor need a standard of evil to know, a standard of good and evil to know who the evildoers are?
Yeah, it's true.
And who would you think is most qualified based on that explanation?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of talked about that in your blog post today, right?
Yeah, and also I think I addressed this argument to Todd a little bit in the chat, in the Hangout. Not as much as in the blog post. It's just I was showing how that argument is just completely absurd.
Yeah, I remember when, I think it was on the Hangout that Todd was in, Mark Citadel commented that that approach was a bit Hasidic, as he called it. Like, it's sort of the idea that like we'll be the holy ones practicing the law, and we'll get other people to do the dirty work for us. I mean,
Yeah,
it seems like that's kind of a parasitical way to practice it. Like, and
yeah,
like that does. I do really feel like a lot of like what Todd says. Like, and I'm not bashing Todd. I like Todd. I think he's a good guy, but
yeah, I agree.
some of what he says is a little bit. I think it's just kind of a little too. Whoa, Nick B. Steve's joined.
Wow.
Hey,
There he is.
welcome, Nick B. Steves. Are you there? Well, I can't hear you. We can't hear you if you're talking, Nick B. Steves, but you're welcome to be here with us. So, oh, okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
Just don't use DDT.
He said, "Let me debug for anybody who's wondering what we're referring to."
That's right. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Debug.
Dad jokes.
Okay. Is it an inside joke?
Well, DDT. It's like that's like pesticide, right?
That's what they used
Yeah,
to spray on
DDT.
people when they were immigrating. Yeah. Dust
Oh.
them with it.
Yeah.
So, what were we saying? Oh yeah, talking about how, well, William, when you were in that hangout, weren't you, with Todd, where he was saying like, you said that it's similar to, you grew up in a similar sect where they had kind of this like.
Oh, he's the
Anabaptist.
Anabaptist. Yeah.
It's like they kind of like. I mean, I guess if you wanted to be like really, I don't want to say autistic about it, but that's like the word that's coming to mind. Like you could say like, well, God can take care of His people, and if you just follow these rules, like God will miraculously take care of you, and like if He doesn't, well, that was just His will. I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense if you want to. Like, it kind of seems internally logical, but like, I don't know, it doesn't really seem effective. It seems like you can do a lot more.
Yeah, it's sort of like you could apply the same principle to economics. You know, there he is.
Oh, I hear you
You're
now,
getting a
Nick.
lot of stack in the background.
Is that me?
Yeah, it's you. Oh, hello? Yes.
You still there, Nick?
Yeah, there is a lot of background noise.
There's just a machine noise.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
that's probably
background
me. Let me go on
Not
mute for
too
a sec.
bad.
Going on mute for a
Fine.
sec.
Okay. Well, what I was getting at is that, of course, I mean, you could say that God will provide for your family, but that doesn't mean you're not going to go out there and apply for jobs and do interviews.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah,
I can't.
right.
Remember, I can't remember that I mean, I remember aspects of that conversation, but I don't.
Yeah, you were. Remember. Yeah. Sorry, I'm starting to echo a little bit. Yeah, I've watched that conversation. You were talking about how like Anabaptists had to rely on the other Christians to do all the heavy lifting.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I got kind of nasty there, didn't I? Well,
No,
it was from my own experience that basically, you know, we were sort of parasitic to a body of Christ that existed that we got to, you know, feign purity against, and you know, without it, we would never have existed. So
yeah.
that was kind of my realization of my own upbringing in this sectarian group, the Christadelphians that I grew up in. It was very which were sort of like modernist anti-Baptists, Anabaptists, sorry.
Yeah.
Modernist Anabaptists. Modernist as in 19th century invention.
Yeah.
So.
There's also the thing is that like when something is a theological position on the level of theology, it's not open to outside criticism. So it's like, you know what I mean, right? Like if you're theologically convinced of something and you're zealous about like Todd is, it's very hard to convince you otherwise. You know, it's very hard to reason with a position that is impervious to reasoning because it's supposed to be transcendent above reasoning.
I think that kind of reasoning does flow from certain premises that he holds and people in those communities hold, but I think the premises are wrong. So it's logically it follows from the sola scriptura, but I think sola scriptura is erroneous.
Yes.
So
yeah.
therefore,
it has real-world applications. Am I coming through now?
you are.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a theological position. It's a hyper-literal translation, you know, hyper-literal interpretation of certain words of Christ that don't really, you know, match up with the entire counsel of God revealed in Scripture anyway. But, I mean, the point is that we're not talking about hypostatic union. You know, we're not talking about the Holy Trinity. We're not talking about mysteries that are completely unattainable by natural human reason alone. We're talking about a system that has a real impact on public life, and maybe your view of Christianity is that it ought not have, that the entire goal of Christianity is to import heaven to earth and behave in a certain way, even though logic and, in fact, history reveals that you'll just get exterminated. And so maybe that's right. I mean, but it's a purely theological point of view, but it has real world implications. And I just see it as yet another. We have a kind of an inside joke in NRX, as we call it, yet another utopian sex cult. It's basically, I guess they don't probably go around naked and have, they're not complete antinomians, but I mean, my first, when I first heard this, it was just like, it was literally like, I can't even, right? It was, I'm very rarely speechless, but this just doesn't make sense even on its own terms, right? I mean, the whole thought experiment, there's 99 people living on an island who refuse to use any violence whatsoever, and one guy comes in with a knife. And so he rules? The one unrighteous person rules? I mean,
and you please God by baring your throat.
Yeah, or whatever. I mean, I don't know why. He probably has no motive. Why would he kill you? But I mean, he could tax you, right? I mean, it's like, it just doesn't. It's sort of like, here's my Christian theology and the way we live public life, and there's no marriage between them whatsoever. It's completely otherworldly. It's like an extreme asceticism that is possibly fitting if you live behind the very high walls of a monastery, and you can essentially get a third party with spears and guns to take care of you. It makes perfect sense, and it's sort of like we're living this way that Jesus talked about in the Sermon on the Mount or whatever. But it has no practical value. I mean, as soon as the emperor, so the emperor ought not serve Christ? I mean, it seems like that's a good thing, right? I don't know. So anyway, it's completely, in a way, it's totally foreign. I mean, it did exist in the early church, and these kinds of utopian sex cults, again, it's a generic term. I don't mean that they're actually a sex cult, but I was just looking through the list of dissenters today. I didn't realize that Wikipedia has a page devoted to the English dissenting sects, and there's about 20 of them on there. And lo and behold, most of them are varying degrees of forbidding marriage and socialist. I mean, it's always that way, and this was nothing new in the 15th and 16th centuries. These kinds of crazy cults continuously spring up throughout, I would argue, all of human history, but certainly all of Christian history. And the only thing that's different is that, in 1300, when this sort of thing sprung up, the bishop said to the prince, "You better suppress these guys. They're a problem." And the prince, being a good Catholic, did what the bishop said. I mean, the prince doesn't want a bunch of disorder in his land anyway. Oh, he brought down the wrath of God from Romans chapter 13 upon them. And, where it all went bad is when, the secular rulers decided they had more to gain by thumbing their nose at the Pope than listening to him. So,
right.
And the rest is history, in my opinion. But
the one question I want to ask you is that people have this idea that people were being killed left and right by the Catholic Church, and
that's false.
Of course.
Yeah.
And like, there's this criticism of, like, I get this a lot from being in the theonomy camp. People say if you implement Mosaic law, people are going to be killed left and right for minor theological differences. And what do you think about that? Like, do you think that's a false, fallacious argument?
Well, I mean, if you literally implemented the Mosaic law,
well, not the Mosaic law necessarily, but using the sword to maintain, put down heretics.
There has generally been a toleration for religious minorities in Christian lands so long as they kept their heads down.
Right.
And so I would not anticipate widespread death and destruction on religious minorities if, say, we had a theonomist king or a Catholic king. So I mean, Christianity, I mean, you can't compel You can't compel faith. I mean, I think that's a consistent teaching
That's true.
within Christianity. And what you can compel is do not teach false teaching. Do not broadcast false teaching.
Right.
And if you, in your little sect, what you do on Saturdays or whatever, is your business, and chances are the prince, the Catholic or otherwise, doesn't really care unless you guys are starting to become a problem,
Right.
And so I don't know. I wouldn't think it would happen automatically. I mean, there are some what happened in Spain was famous because Spain had a lot of problems. They had a lot of Jews there, and the Jews, had significant amounts of clout and money and power, and so they were a problem. So I can, sort of imagine having to maybe suppress them a little bit more than you would some minor, the Zoroastrians or whatever.
Right.
But if you get these evangelistic, yet another sex cults, and all of a sudden they're not content just to sort of be underground. They're interested in spreading because they are chilastic. They usually very much want to spread their false teaching, and of course, then both the bishop and the king kind of need to work hand in hand, because it's not good for the bishop because it's false teaching, and it's not good for the king because he wants a united people. He wants a basically united people. So,
and they see themselves as a restoration of the one true faith.
Yeah, yeah. So there's no, a heretic that's on a mission from God is not just gonna not gonna stop his.
The more you poke him, the more he comes at you.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I don't. I'm actually pretty moderate on the question. I don't think we have to burn all of them.
Yeah, I don't either.
But only gas some of them. That's kind of my
a representative few.
My moderate position on the subject. But
better leave their bodies out for a week or so.
Well, I would do that with commies. I would definitely. You saw what the commies did in Mexico. Oh, and Spain, especially Mexico. It was just, yeah. There's. I could imagine, being the prince in charge or advising the prince in charge. We really need to make a gruesome example of these people who are seeking to, overthrow just the entire Western way of thinking. It's not even really a struggle for gimme dats, right? That's at least honest. If you're trying to take what I got, that's at least a human motivation, But what the communists were trying to spread wasn't that.
Right.
It was just absolute hatred towards just normative faith, So, yeah.
How about SJWism?
Directed at me, they're kind of the shock troops for the establishment. They give the establishment plausible deniability. I see them mostly as useful idiots, more than.
I would agree.
I don't see the bulk of SJWs being. They're not so much in power as seeking it.
Right.
So they're annoying, and I would hate to, get attacked by them, in some way, but I'm not. I don't think many are amenable to reason, but I think that they would be. Most of them would be amenable to force. If you imagine, in 5 years, some restoration of what I would seek, a restoration of formalism, essentially, some formal power, where the people that had power were called the people in power, and the people that didn't have any power were not lied to so that they thought they had power. The entire problem with SJWs is that the entire system of power is divided, and so there is power to be gained by status whoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the entire system of Republican government is that way, really, I would argue. But so if we had a formalist restoration, chances are you'd have some very high-profile college professors, lawyers, CEOs, newscasters who were executed. I can imagine that. But I think that your average SJW would put their finger to the wind and say, I think they should still be tried, but they should be, I can't remember the word. There's actually a word for, it's kind of like a pardon. It's sort of like, okay, you did these crimes, we understand, all is forgiven, go live your life, but don't seek to broadcast news or work in a university or lead a U.S. corporation in the future. Get an honest job, basically.
So they let them off with a warning, basically.
Yeah, basically. A warning and a lifelong ban from certain kinds of professions where they could essentially do what they used to do, which is have an undue influence on people's perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's what there's a word for it. It's on the tip of my tongue, but basically some sort of
rent sinking.
No. It's a word that means oh crap. It's I should actually what I should do is look on the chat because somebody's probably already said it, but at any rate, it basically means you're restored to normal life with a kind of like a demerit. You have a demerit, and we've recognized it, and it's part of the public record. But we're going to be kind to you, and it's actually kind of like a parole, I guess. But
yeah.
I wish I could remember the word. It's very obscure. It was used in like the Soviet Union and stuff like that. It's a kind of like a show. I mean, there's a little bit of a show trial aspect to it, except we would just expect some level of repentance. Basically, you repent, we're not going to kill you.
Right. Atonement.
Yeah. No, it's not. No. Oh crap! I'm gonna have to look it up, guys. You guys keep talking. I'm gonna go look this word.
I think it starts with an R.
Yeah.
Redemption.
No, not that exactly. You know where I'm going to look for it is in my ask.
Repentance.
Because
Recapitulation.
Race.
We're supposed to be talking about race. That's
Bring
true.
us back to race, yes.
Bringing us back to race.
Let's see. We've been talking about. How did we even get onto this subject? I don't remember. Like, started talking about different.
Guys were talking about Anabaptists and radical pacifism and something like that.
Yeah, Anabaptism clearly a white guy's game, though. Let's bring it back to race. Nobody else does that. That's strictly a certain kind of Germanic disposition that gets obsessed with that kind of stuff. Nobody else on God's green earth.
The word that I'm looking for. The word that I was looking for was called lustrate.
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 Lustrate. That's it.
Yeah, it's which
can someone be lustrated?
Yes. It's a.
Sounds expensive.
It is a. It's considered rare. Verb. Google says verb rare.
Rare.
It is. Purified by expiatory sacrifice, ceremonial washing, or some other ritual action, basically.
That sounds like atonement.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a symbolic atonement. It's sort of like you get a little bit of that with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission stuff that was in South Africa. A lot of people did a lot of bad things, and they decided to stop the killing. And I'm not a believer in South Africa, but I think that there's perfectly good precedent and reason to want to do that in the end of a restoration.
Yes. Speaking of which, there was a question that came to my mind because this whole race conflict seems to be like what's really fueling it is democracy and the Republican system. So do you think, like, if we return to monarchy or some system that's authoritarian where the people don't get a say at all, it's all this crap would disappear about race, that there will no longer be any special interest groups vying for power?
Absolutely.
And there'll be...
I absolutely believe that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's democracy inherently opens up for advocacy of taking from those guys and giving to me. I mean, and democracy in Africa works like this every time.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as you describe democracy to an African, he immediately realizes this is a chance for my tribe to get crap from that tribe.
Right.
They know it immediately. And it's only liberal Westerners that can kind of sort of abstract and think, maybe this is a good way to run things, right? Because, well, first of all, we don't have a lot of tribal conflict. It's certainly not anymore. And certainly not within, like an Anglosphere country. It's like we're all Anglosphere, we're all Anglospherians here. We don't feel the sort of tribal resentment that most of the rest of the people in the world would naturally feel. So it oddly enough, it makes some sense to us. But anytime you have a democratic election in Kenya, for example, you've got one tribe trying to vote in their guy so they can take stuff from the other tribe. I mean, it's how it works. And Aristotle saw this, and in fact, the founding fathers saw this as well. They were very much against establishing a democracy, but the republican system they set up, I would argue, inevitably evolved into more or less a democracy. And once the 51% can vote themselves largesse from the public purse, then that's the end of it. The sooner the better.
That's where we are now.
I would disagree that under a monarchy that the people have no say. It's just the say is different. And I would also disagree that under a democracy that they actually have a say.
Yes,
I mean, it's a kind of dysfunctional tyranny that
it's a fiction. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Well, first of all, the monarch is the father to his people.
Yeah.
So I mean, he is very much. He is not beholden necessarily to the public opinion, but he does care what his people think, and in fact, probably cares a lot more than our democratically elected leaders care. And at the same time, yes, you're right. A democracy is not really power to the people. We, at least as it's implemented in America, we pretend we give power to the people, but the power really rests principally with those who can shape public opinion and control the narrative that most people believe.
Yeah, and our current liberty is based on economic surplus, not on political, political will.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. The one comment I want to make is that it seems that under a monarchy or a formalistic system that you're describing, where the people have no say at all, it forces them to govern themselves more, as opposed to turning to politicians and to get, to do stuff for them. It forces them to have self-accountability.
Yeah,
and not atomized either. Accountability to your family, to your community, and to your king. It's an organic, healthy, reference to many stakeholders, as it were, we might say, versus just, hey, I'm free to do whatever I want. Everybody else be damned. That's my freedom.
The criticism I often hear of monarchy is that, because you can't change the system from within the system, it forces disadvantaged groups to resort to revolution or civil war. What do you guys think about that?
I think that's kind of poppycock, really.
What was that? Sam, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we need to get other voices in there, but yeah.
You're saying that the argument is what? That democracy keeps people from resorting to civil war?
Yeah.
That seems to be
Well,
hardly true. It's the same. It's the same thing with like feminism. Like you have feminism pretends that it's done something, and all it's done is confounded the natural order, blinded us to the natural order, taken patriarchy and placed its position of power in the state, and just uses state violence to impose its rebellion. I mean, it's not changed anything. You cannot change the natural order of things. You can make it. You can set up conditions where it flows better, or ways in which it's bumping into itself all the time. But you cannot actually change the fact that men, on average, are stronger, more intelligent, and are leaders, and women are not. You cannot make that different, no matter what you want to do or say or feel. And the same thing goes here with, we got to rent a king for, periods of 4 or 8 years. Rent a tyrant. He's way less accountable than the actual tyrant was.
Right.
Ever
was.
Yeah.
Well, and he also doesn't have complete power either. A lot of the power is hidden in unelected, largely unaccountable bureaucracies. You've got significant power in the Supreme Court, you've got power in Congress, you've got power in state governors. I mean, everybody is just wrestling for a finite amount of power, and it's just there to be wrestled for. And if you have one guy who has it all, and the buck is always going to stop with him, I mean, it doesn't mean he doesn't create a bureaucracy, but he can hire and fire.
Right.
It's like he's like, this bureaucracy has served its purpose. I'm retiring you guys. You can't do that. I mean, no president can do that. I mean, we hypothesized, for example, a Ron Paul election to president. The first thing he's going to do is he's going to say, I'm going to close down the Department of Education. Good luck, President. Good luck, Mr. President.
Yeah.
I mean, he might be able to, but whether he could do it without calling out the National Guard on Congress, I don't know. I mean, because the Congress is going to say, we apportion this money. It shall be spent. It has to be spent. And, what's the president going to do? He's going to say, okay, well, I'm going to spend that money by dropping it all into a toilet, and I'm going to send all the Department of Education home. No, we have oversight of this money. It'll just be this big constitutional crisis. I mean, it could work, it might work, but the reality is this is uncharted waters for American democracy.
Yeah.
Hey, Sam, do you read the Kakistocracy blog?
Kakistocracy? No, I've never heard of it.
He's good. Porter. Yeah.
Yeah, Porter. He's really funny.
He's really brilliant.
Can you send me
I can drop a link.
Well, I was going to say, he had a recent blog post where he copied and pasted a comment left on Un's review, and he was saying, it basically said that, the U.S. pretty much has pretty much a worldwide empire where they pull a lot of strings all over the world, and so people argue, oh, we're a lot more peaceful and democratic now, but really that's just because you have a global empire that's sort of keeping down any rebellion. And maybe that's not the best explanation, but it's like you have this illusion of peace, but really you have the U.S. basically occupying the world, so that's why you don't see as many civil wars and things. But it's not because democracy is like making everybody's voice heard and making everybody happy.
The name of that post is called Franchising the Globe. I'll drop that link in our chat
yes.
here. Yeah. There's that second link is the one that Ian's talking about.
Oh, it's a WordPress. Good.
Was that?
Oh, I already follow. Just haven't bothered to read.
Yeah.
Oh, he's really funny. He'll laugh out loud reading him. He's really has a good way with words.
He's like an outrage pornographer, but he's so good at it that he's so articulate and he's just masterful at sending up these, and carrying on this snark, sort of this snark. He just carries it on for paragraphs after paragraph, and it's absolutely brilliant. Ordinarily, I sort of warn people to stay away from outrage porn. I think it can be degenerate, but in Porter's case, it's so good. It's worth it for the literary value alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the photos he put to the top of his Twitter was really funny too.
Yeah, you might want to be careful reading this at work. I have to say, he's got one about bitchin' nicht in die Duschen kacken.
I think I missed that one.
Please do not poop in the showers. Written in English. Written in Arabic, of course, which is like, who else would do it? Jeez. Oh my gosh. Take a shower here. Do not poop here. I think it's random. Whatever comes up is random. You can just do a Control R and get another one. Oh, here's one girl saying I had an abortion.
This is his header.
It's just his random. Yeah, he's these random header photos that come up, and some of them are not really suitable for work. So you just might want to be, a little careful. But
I got Netanyahu pointing at what's his name?
Oh,
Garrison, Israel's greatest threat.
I've got the military man dry humping his boyfriend, and they're giving themselves a wet sloppy kiss. That's
I remember
beautiful.
There's one where it's Joe Biden putting his arms around this lady, and she's really uncomfortable.
Yes.
And Jews say Black Lives Matter. Oh, we're back on race.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really funny blog. You should all check it out. Cacastocracyblog.wordpress.com.
Yep.
Here, I'll post a link in the text chat in case anybody's not familiar.
There we are.
So, yeah, just
Well, thanks for breathing a bit of new life into our convo here, NB.
Oh, happy to do it. I probably won't be able to stay long. I had the room to myself. My wife was at the gym, and I'd gotten done putting the girls to bed, and came up and saw you guys were at it. So I figured I'd join for a little while. But my time will be limited because cool. my wife's not going to be thrilled. It's like, oh, you have another one of those. It's like,
well, we've been for 3 hours, so we don't have to go too much longer. So I like to keep them between. I'm trying to keep them between 3 and 3.5 hours, so it's not too long.
Can I drop a suggestion maybe for next time, based on a Facebook interaction I had? I don't know exactly what theme this would be, but I have a Catholic friend on my Normie Facebook site who just said something, dropped in. He's doing religious studies, so he's like way off in the stratosphere about this stuff right now. But I try to red pill him as much as I can. But he had this something about, what do you say? Well, maybe I shouldn't read his thing right out here. But he was like talking about Carl Jung and the underlying structure of the unconscious and religion and this kind of thing. And then he had friends that responded in various ways, and then I decided I'd weigh in. And then I ended up with having this kind of smackdown with this atheist. Because I had said something like, this is what I said: religion means the practice of a cult discipline, not the same thing as peak moments or transcendence, though these may be part of a religious life. So while atheism and more vague discipleship may produce peak moments, these are capacities of all humans. They cannot produce the spiritual good that comes through religious devotion. Peak moments are not the goal of religious life, but the respite along the road of transformation. And he just thought this atheist thought this was horribly arrogant, that somebody should say from a religious perspective that we have access to something that they don't have access to. And I forgot that there was this trigger that they would have, and then I thought it's the ultimate arrogance to suppose you can have access to something worthy when you never engage in it, in a discipline leading you to it. That just my good feelings, my numinous experience, my Dawkins kind of, because I go to the symphony and I feel something, is the same as somebody who lives their whole life facing the Eucharist, going to the Mass, engaging in the discipline. I'm sorry, you can't just live your dismantled existence and have the same thing as someone who engages in discipline, in religious discipline. It's like saying, because I bang nails into wood, I'm the same as a master furniture maker.
Well, I don't think that. Not all Christians, and myself included, are terribly devout. And we don't always practice the discipline that we're supposed to. And I don't have a mystical bone in my body, and if it weren't for a sense of obligation to my own life, my history, the people that I've known, and the people that for whom I'm responsible spiritually, I could easily see being an atheist. Which I know that's probably a terrible thing to say. But I don't get a lot of. But so at the same time, I don't feel that I feel enough when I go to the symphony. As I've gotten older, I'm starting to feel that sense of numinous experience. But I think what a religious viewpoint does is at least it makes it possible for you to have an explanation for numinous experience. Other than just neurons in my brain were played with in some way. Because I think an atheist can have neurons in his brain played with in a certain way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But but as a Christian, I sort of feel like, that's just a taste of something to come, really, for me. It's like, because I don't know, I'm not as devout as I should be. I go to mass, I do everything I'm supposed to do. I try to pray, I wear the scapular. I say a Hail Mary before I put it on. Say a Hail Mary after I take it off. I do these ritual things, but I very rarely feel anything from them.
But I don't think you should. I don't think you. I think all the best pastors would tell you that if you're hunting for feeling, then you're going the wrong way. And
that's probably true. Yeah.
It's the long haul of discipline that actually leads to the kind of transformation you're almost kind of not aware of. So I wasn't trying to argue for more ecstatic experience. In fact, I was arguing against the idea.
Oh, okay.
He seemed to misunderstand me.
Yeah.
That for him, he thought. Anyway, it was quite. The trigger was quite interesting. It's like, oh wow, I didn't expect this guy to go off on.
Yeah. Well, his worldview is that everything is just atoms, and there's no atoms that are available to you that aren't available to him, right? I guess that's based on his worldview. The critique makes sense, but of course we don't agree with that worldview. We believe in actual ghosts in the human machine. We believe in human souls, and human souls interact with matter, but they are not purely matter. Oh, I hope I didn't derail the conversation at that point.
Are we alone?
No, I don't think so. It's not showing up that way.
I'm just getting tired because we've been going for 3 hours now, and wondering.
And Johnny lately comes with all this
Do we have any
energy.
other subjects you want to discuss, or? I don't want to
the great race.
Take up people. About. Well, Nick BSD is what are your views on racial issues? Is your view generally just that having a fairly homogeneous civilization is good, or do you have any more unconventional views?
Yeah, I'm probably really moderate on the subject. I don't believe the Christian faith really has any unique insight I should say the Christian faith does not have an insight that is not available to common reason regarding the racial mix in a nation. I mean, nation is a people. That's what it means. Natus, from of birth. A nation is a group of somewhat related, genetically related people. And the Christian faith is agnostic as to how you might add to that. I mean, the Christian faith is universal in the sense that it is applicable to all peoples of the world, because there is a universal human condition. That doesn't make us universalist. It doesn't mean we're all the same. It doesn't mean there are not wildly distinct cognitive I mean, we can be different psychologically, we can be different physically, we can be different in a multitude of ways. We can have different norms, we can have different taboos, different histories, different languages, different ways of thinking. Christianity reaches past that to what is universal in human nature, whatever that is. It's not all of human nature, So I think that, in generally speaking, you don't want significantly large minority groups in a nation. If you do have them, you want to make sure they are not troublesome. And there's nothing immoral about setting for the secular rulers to set up a system of privilege in a nation where there's kind of a pecking order, of a caste, and they probably shouldn't be really hard castes, but sort of a soft caste system in which the majority group sort of gets to remain the majority group and have their ways of life preserved, or at least evolve naturally, and not be taken over by some other group that doesn't share their norms. But at the same time, the Christian church can be agnostic about that kind of a system, and the Christian church can also be, well, we're not going to necessarily condemn miscegenation, right? I mean, if the Christian church recognizes Christian as Christian, and if Christian wants to marry Christian and have mixed breed kids, the church is somewhat agnostic about that. And I think
I would agree.
I think that we have to. We don't want the church to do too much. The church has a role in teaching faith and morals, and the secular ruler has a crucial role in providing for the general welfare. And ideally, and certainly in all the best societies, those two forces, those two sovereigns sort of work together in concert for the benefit of the people. And but I don't have any real, in terms of race relations today, I don't have a hateful bone in my body, and I certainly don't hate blacks, and I don't even really hate Jews, and I don't even really hate most Muslims, to be honest. What I do hate are the whites that have enabled minorities of various kinds to become problematic. Jews are a problem today because whites let them become a problem. Blacks are, all too often looking for gimme-dats and committing a lot of crime because whites advocated policies that led to that. Muslims are a problem because they're not in Muslim lands. Who advocated for that? Did Muslims come over here by force? No. Whites advocated to that, and I do believe that whites sort of, at least, were the dominant race in the world. I still think they are, and if whites, even though they are a global minority today, decided that we were going to retake the world, we could. Islamic nations have never been militarily weaker for the last, Lord knows, over a millennium. I mean, they're not, in themselves, they are not a threat. They're only a threat when certain kind of whites decide to welcome them into historically white nations, historically European nations. So, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of a, total racist by progressive standards, but I don't actually hate these people.
You're a Christ cuck by.
I know. I'm sure I'll get called that. It's all right.
1488 cut.
Yeah, I know. They got the wrong enemy. They got the wrong enemy.
Agree with everything you said there. So yeah.
I mean, I'm my heart goes out to 1488 sorts of folks, and I understand their grievance, but.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I isolate my capacity as a white person within Christianity to stand up for my people. That I consider it an acceptable vocation as a white Christian, because I think it ultimately leads to peace.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So for that justification alone, I feel it's okay, and I think quite simply we are the dominant race. I mean, I see that as matter of fact. Observe history, observe capacities. I mean, certainly Asians are a challenge, but they seem to lack somewhat our creativity and our courage and our foolhardiness as well.
Yeah.
That just make that competition quite different. It's quite brutal if we're actually fighting.
Right.
It's not a pleasant. It's not a pleasant
We
thing.
wouldn't want to be
competing in the marketplace. It's a little different.
Yeah, and that's probably Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say the thing you were saying about advocating for your people, like you're putting that within a Christian context. I mean, it kind of made me think about. I think it was on Faith and Heritage. There was an article where somebody said like. Well, they're talking about how some Christian was saying, like, Christians should never think about race. Should never be, like, advocating for your people is racist, and therefore Christians shouldn't do it. But, like, he's saying, well, then by that same standard, you should have to denounce Martin Luther King, because
well,
that's what he was doing.
Does it make sense to what about, should you never advocate for your family? I mean, is the Christian is the Christian obligated to care equally for every single human being in the world, or is there a radius factor of care and concern? I care most for the people closest to me, a little bit less for the people a little bit farther away, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you can any model you want, whether it's geographical, social, whatever. Build a model. Am I required to divide up my love and care and concern for 7 billion people equally? Or am I allowed to prefer my own wife, my own children, my own church, my own town, my own state, my own country, my own history? Can I give a little bit of preference to that without having any ill will to others? Right? It's like I can love my own without hating the other. Now if that other is a threat to me, then I'm justified, maybe not in hating him, but in taking whatever precautions or doing whatever is necessary to protect my own interests. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't scale. I mean, that whole thing was like, I don't believe whites. I'm not a white nationalist because I don't believe whites are a nation, but Italians are. Well, at least Northern Italians. The Irish are a nation. The English are a nation. At least they are today. They were three.
Far, yeah.
They were 3 or 4 in the past, but they're today. There's an essential character of Englishness, more or less. There's certainly an essential character of Frenchness. Germany and Italy were united much later in time, so you could maybe make an argument that there is really no such thing as an essential German character, but I mean, there has become one over time, and it's okay. There's nothing, and having an essential German character doesn't mean you hate Turks, but at the same time, you're not obligated to treat the Turk equal to your own people,
Right.
So, I mean, I think, and certainly the Turk would not return the favor. I mean, he's not gonna. I mean, whites are the least racist people on earth, especially Northwest Europeans, and we're the only ones with these hang-ups. I mean, the Turk is obviously going to prefer the Turk. The Chinaman's going to obviously prefer the Chinaman. I work with Chinese people. I mean, They are as racist as hell. I mean, they
had
hate
LUE-YEE here earlier.
they hate Koreans. They certainly hate the Japs. I mean, they don't even like the Hans from up north. Don't even like. They hate the Cantonese. They hate them. I mean, they treat them like trash.
I wish LUE-YEE were still here. I wonder if he would have anything to say on this.
Probably.
I feel bad talking about this stuff sometimes when somebody who probably could give a good commentary on it isn't here.
We've done that twice now.
Oh, I'm getting some hate on the comments. I hope he's just being okay. He's being silly, not serious. Good.
He's being.
Oh, I'm sure I'll get it seriously somewhere else, but I'm not saying anything here that I haven't said other times, so it's not.
I mean, I read your Ask FM. I kind of know what your views on a lot of stuff are. So
yeah.
I just
I get a lot of mileage out of that. I really do. It's like unbelievable.
Mileage out of what now?
Oh, just out of the Ask. It's like it's a big fraction of my social media. You know. It's just,
Yeah.
I go on there and got 8 new questions, and you know they're not all great questions, but some of them are.
Yeah, I see them every once in a while on Twitter.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions I haven't answered yet, just because I can't think of a good answer to them. Like, I got one about like if you could be an alien species from any. Well, I got that question too. I don't know who asked it, but I haven't. It's still my unanswered questions, but I just can't think of a good answer to it.
Oh yeah. Oh.
I haven't really stopped to think about it.
Yeah, I get some really, really good ones, and I hope the askers aren't disappointed, but I think they're really good questions, but I don't have good answers, and I want to take them seriously, so I tend to sort of put them down in the priority list. I'll eventually get to them, and then other ones are just kind of throwaway questions that just deserve 20 seconds of thought, so not a big deal. So you ask me an easy or a stupid question is going to get a much quicker answer, or delete, than a hard question, but yeah. Anyway, I'm glad people ask. I mean, I'm terrible at asking. I just, I think of something every now and then, but I'm just not I don't know. Maybe it's a testament to my own incuriosity. How bad.
I don't ask as many questions as I used to. I used to ask a lot of them, but I guess I don't know, run out of questions to ask, so I don't ask that many anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever. You guys, Sam, are you still there?
He's on mute.
Yes, I'm right here.
There he is.
Yeah. Sorry if you haven't felt left out of this conversation. I hope. Or...
No, I was just listening in.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's 10:20 here in Eastern. We've been going for 3 hours and 20 minutes. You guys think we should wrap up now?
That would get my vote.
That's long enough for anybody to listen.
Yeah.
Well, since this is a democracy, we should go by votes and yeah. Okay. All right.
I think we should just surrender to King Ian's.
Yeah, okay, Ian,
right.
this is gonna last as long as you want it to last. No less, no more.
I think it's been good. I think it's been fun. Thanks for coming, everyone. I think I'll wrap up now. All right. So thanks, William Scott. Thanks, Nick B. Steve. Thanks, Dominionist Sam.
Adios.
And thank you. Adios. And thank you to LUE-YEE and Rick who were here earlier. We had a good conversation, everybody. I hope that for all our viewers out there, this was a good conversation too. I guess we'll see you next time, whenever that is. And have a good night, everyone.